So yeah, bro, I was telling you, these are like some of my favorite episodes where I don't even really know my guest at all. I just get, a person who either a mutual friend that introduces us or I come across you on Instagram or whatever. And I watched, was it a 15-minute clip
Yeah, it was like 15 minutes.
of
15,
your like
16 minutes.
introductory podcast. And my friend Angie's like, hey, he wants to get into podcasting and you guys are cut from the same cloth. You were an MMA fighter, a jiu-jitsu guy, and I watched it and I was like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, dude, I'll drive up. Let's do it. And here we are. So it's cool how that works, man. And what I was just talking about, I was violating podcast rules where we started talking before I hit record. I was like, we just need to shut the fuck up and push record. Yeah. But dude, the world of podcasting is crazy because it's like fucking, what is that? The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Yeah,
like
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah,
or whatever
bro.
They call it.
And it's real. Like I've been connected to so many different people and it's been like so many different professional opportunities. So many friendships have grown from this. And it all happened from, I had a video go viral 3 years ago now. Andy Stumpf, who is pretty big in the podcast world, reached out and said, hey, you want to do an episode with me? And as soon as I did that, I started getting hit up by all of his fans. And they're like, that was a great episode. When are you going to start a podcast? I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. And, again, we mentioned it before we started recording, but I think a very common thing for men that are kind of cut from our cloth is imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And there was a part of me that was like, dude, what do I have to talk about? What value do I have to bring to people? And I really feel like through this journey, I've got through that. And bro, the truth is, guys like us have all kinds of fucking value. That doesn't mean we're the end all be all, but there's a lot of good that we can fucking provide for society. And I've watched it happen through this podcast over the last couple of years. And that's why I'm such a proponent of, dude, if you have a message to share, let's get it out there. And I don't even fucking know you, but you're starting a show. And I thought, you know what? Let's have him on the show and help grow your platform right from the fucking beginning, man.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think it's kind of funny how sometimes when stuff happens, like in your case, you're making that video. The reason I know about you, because a couple of years ago, I followed you on Instagram because you blew up because you put that video out there and, you're following your purpose or whatever was, grabbing your attention that seemed like it was important to you. In my case, and I still have imposter syndrome with pretty much everything I do, whether it's professionally podcasting. I just started 2 businesses this year and you kind of go back and forth between like hyper anxiety and, feeling really confident. And that anxiety comes with a lot of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We're talking about, no matter how much empirical evidence you see in front of you that you bring value to the table, but I think, in my case, it was starting my podcast, which isn't even really out yet. It's interesting the way that God or the universe or whatever label you want to put on it, it just kind of puts things in your path once you take that first step into whatever it is that draws your attention. I don't know if you can hear me, but
yeah, slide it up just a little bit. You'll be good.
So my, actually one of my really close friends now, the reason we're friends, and we've known each other for years. He did my very first episode. We were never close until I reached out to him for the podcast. You'd love him, a 10-year Army career, really good guy, really humble, same thing, imposter syndrome. But, right?
Yeah.
But we knew each other for a long time just from the gym. And we kind of talked here and there, never really that close. And he made a comment about just Ritalin and the stuff, what he was put on as a kid and how it affected him. And then he didn't realize he was, capable till he got in the Army, whole separate topic. But I was like, hey, bro, you want to do a podcast? And we started talking, and his kid is the same age as my kids. We get the kids together all the time, and we're like really close friends now, just because I took that step. And same thing in this case, like with Angie connecting us. It's you take that first step, and stuff just kind of starts to show its face and new connection. Even if the podcast never turns into anything at all for me,
yeah.
Even if I got a couple friends out of it, a couple new connections, whatever it may be, all worth it. Stuff that wouldn't happen if you don't take that step.
Well, and something that I say often on my show is if I were to suddenly start getting 0 downloads, I'd still be doing the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and don't get me wrong, like it's cool when your podcast becomes like a viable source of income and it's like it can supplement the other things in your life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when in today's society can you sit down with either a friend or someone that you're just meeting, like we are in this case, and just share thoughts for 2 hours? People don't do that anymore.
Not really. When
And
you have
that,
the time.
and that used to be, I mean, back when we were hunter gatherers, you'd fucking forage or fight wars or go hunting and come home and sit around the campfire and you would bond with your tribe. And we don't fucking bond with our tribe anymore, man. And it's interesting hearing you say that, because there's so many of my friends that I've got closer with through this.
Mhm.
And like one of my brown belts, his name's Tyler Stanway, is like, we've become like fucking brothers because of this podcast journey. And he was very well received on my show. And then the same thing, he started his show and it's doing well. And it's like, it's cool to watch not only the actual shows themselves grow, but just the networks of people that you build through this. You know, like through Andy, I ended up meeting Mike Glover, and now me and Mike are partnered with some things through jiu-jitsu and fieldcraft and stuff. And it just continues to expand and continues to expand. And it's cool, like having friends and meeting people and building your network. But more importantly than being cool, bro, our society needs strong networks of men right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our families need that. Our communities need it. Like, I want my daughters, and it's like, you'll get to meet the team tonight, even if you don't get to train it, which bums me out. But hey,
Sorry, it may still happen. I'm not very good at sitting and watching.
But I like my daughters to look at the men that I surround myself with and say, oh, that's what a man is. That's an example of a man. And it's funny because, you know, I always refer to Angie's kids as my kids because I help raise them. And her oldest daughter, Gwen, she's 17. She's starting to get to that point where she's seeing the value in strong, capable men. And she's like, all of Greg's friends like are in good shape and they're strong and they're super nice and they're humble. And it's like, yeah, because that's how we're supposed to conduct ourselves as protectors and warriors of our community. And it's our duty to show that example to our children. And bro, I mean, we'll go off on 100 tangents, but many kids in our society don't have that example anymore. And look where it's taken them.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the primary reasons where I decided to start mine. And I'll tell you the backstory on why I decided to start that in a minute. But I have a 4-year-old daughter. I have a 6-year-old son. They'll be 5 and 7 in January. And one of the things that I'm the most grateful for the things that I've just gravitated towards in my life is my jiu-jitsu community.
Yep.
One of my best friends is a longtime black belt, cornered me in all my fights. It's the type of dude that I want my kids to grow up in. That's Uncle Sean.
Yep.
You know, and the rest of the community there, and it's super diverse, as you know. So it's not like I'm pushing. It's not like you want them to be tough. It's not like you want to, which you do, but it's not like this brutal kind of from the outside looking in thing where it's like I send my kids to martial arts because I want them to get tough, and I want to. It's a part of it. But it's more so just because of the people they're exposed to.
Yeah.
It takes a tribe, you know.
Dude, it's funny you say that because I tell my team all the time, I'm like, jiu-jitsu is the catalyst that brings us together, but being brought together is the goal of what this place is about, you know? And I always joke and say we could come in here and weave fucking baskets and get the same thing out of it. However, I do think to get that intimate bond, whatever you do as a group has to be challenging.
There's something to be said for suffering with people. Yeah. And the jiu-jitsu community is, it's huge now. It's not like it was, 20, 30 years ago before the UFC blew it up.
Bro, even 5 years ago, like I opened this place in 2015. So I've been, even the whole time I was a police officer in Seattle, I owned this academy, and we always hovered around 20 to 30 members. And there's a lot of different business reasons behind that, and like cultural reasons and things that I had to understand as a business owner, that like fighters make the worst clients. You know what I mean? But more importantly than that is I had to realize that if I want this to be a viable place for my community to grow, the old adage that jiu-jitsu is for everyone, man, that is true. Mm-hmm. And your 22-year-old purple belts that are chasing titles, they don't understand that a 45-year-old soccer mom that wants to be empowered is just as important as a teammate is that dude that can push you for 5 rounds in a row and get your cardio up and all the stuff that like competitors are worried about. And I've finally figured out the formula to have both different types of approaches come together and be congruent under one roof. And then the fucking magic happens.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, culturally, all of your big influencers today, that like people that hold a lot of their opinions hold a lot of value, like Jocko and Joe Rogan and Andy Stumpf, like the people that are dominating the airwaves, they all preach the power of jiu-jitsu. That message is starting to be received more and more. And bro, I'll show you upstairs. Upstairs was my mat room for 7 years. The downstairs mat room was all CrossFit. And we just expanded and we're like already at capacity again.
Awesome.
You know, and I keep saying it's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's fine. We were talking a little bit before. I met one of your buddies in Utah because of jiu-jitsu. It's such a small world, and it is one of those things that brings people together. And yeah, there's so much value in suffering with people. And did you ever read the book Tribe, Sebastian Junger?
Parts of it, not cover to cover though, but yeah.
Well, you already have the whole concept.
Exactly.
It's a great book, but it talks about suffering together. It talks about military, and it talks about like the bombings in Britain during World War II and people that go through that together. And when it's over, it's almost like they miss it, even though it was this traumatic experience and their life was in danger. They miss that closeness that they develop by suffering, going through those situations. Excuse me, those situations with other people.
I think that is why a lot of soldiers, when the war is over, that's like their end all be all, because they felt so tight to the men and women to their left and right that once they move past that and they get a job stocking shelves at Home Depot, like the night shift, and I'm not knocking anybody's professional careers, but if you don't have something that bonds you to people, now you're going to miss something immensely. And in my theory, that's actually where most of the PTS comes from. It's not like, fuck, I saw someone get blown up or I and don't get me wrong, there's traumatic experiences that affect people very, very dramatically. But in my own experience, the men that suffer the most couldn't find purpose once they came back home.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I don't have any experience in that personally, obviously. The closest thing that I have is jiu-jitsu and fighting.
Yeah. Well, bro, I'll tell you, dude, because I've done MMA fights. I've competed in jiu-jitsu a lot, and it's not that different. And I know that sounds crazy to people that haven't experienced war, but you don't go out into the battlefield and think, all right. I mean, there are times where I'm like, this is hairy. I might not make it out of here, right? Those are thoughts that go through your head. But really, you're focused on the task at hand. The task at hand, if you fuck up, comes with severe consequences. And the nerves around that, you can start to control them through exposure to that environment. And it's the same thing with fighting, man. Like, I'll tell you right now, if you and I put gloves and mouthpieces in and go out on the mats, I'm going to eat a couple jabs and I'm going to be fucking like, I'm going to get gun shy because I haven't been punched in the face in a long time, you know? And you need that constant stimuli. And the reason I know that is because every once in a while I'll do that. I'll have a buddy come in town that's like still into MMA. He's like, hey, you want to get a couple rounds? And it's hard to say no because I feel like a pussy. But I'm like, fuck, dude. And there was a time when you could tee off on me and
just eat it.
I'm in the fucking fight.
Chin down.
Yeah, fucking let's go.
It almost feels good.
Yeah.
In a way, once you get used to it.
You know? Yeah. And the same thing for combat. Like I remember when I was in Ramadi in 04, 05, getting ambushed, like didn't even raise my blood pressure. And then I went a couple deployments where like it was real quiet. And I did a deployment up north in Erbil, which is basically a vacation. Like I didn't even hear a gunshot the whole time. Then then we went back down to Baghdad, and the first time we got attacked, I was like, "Oh fuck, dude!" Like jumping out of my fucking skin, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting seeing the parallels between that, and that's why I think jiu-jitsu and fighting is such an imperative part of just honing your warrior spirit, you know?
Yeah. And I don't, like I said, I have no military experience. I've never been shot at or anything like that. Part of me almost feels a little bit of guilt over that, just being the type of man that I am and being, the gifts that I've been given. There's part of me that even feels a little bit of guilt with that.
Yeah.
But with the fighting, Like I said, I've never had that experience, but I've had experiences where it's clearly not PTSD. It's not this fly's killing me.
Oh, I know. It fucking drive me nuts, dude.
But I've had a handful of moments that I actually remember really vividly, like losses or getting the worst thing I've ever experienced is getting gassed in a fight in my underwear on TV in front of a bunch of people. But even in training, there's been a couple, because I used to psych myself out in a way where probably it wasn't even helpful for me. Because when I was going into fights, I was thinking about going to war, metaphorically.
Yeah.
I was thinking about slitting throats and taking scalps, and like I'd take myself to this mental place. And I even there's this one moment, even in training one time, we were doing Shark Tank rounds. I used to train with there's a team in California I used to travel down and train with sometimes, and I remember this moment where I was, just to try to get that little bit of extra effort out of myself. I was imagining that I was fighting for my life.
Yep.
And I got tired and I got in a position that I couldn't get out of, and it freaked me the fuck out.
Yeah, dude.
In a real visceral way. And I kind of got up from it, kind of disturbed. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to change my mental frame of mind a little bit.
Dude, I think I talk about that often on the show because I'm a black belt. I've been a black belt for almost 10 years now, or 9 years next month. I get my 3rd degree next month. And so I don't get put in positions very often anymore where I have 0 options and I'm just at the mercy of another man. But because I don't get put there very often, when I do, those emotions are still very real. And I have to revisit those. Now, I've been there enough times where I feel like I can have that conversation in my head, and be like, hey, this feels fucking scary. Get control of yourself. This is your friend on top of you.
Yep.
He's not going to fucking kill you. But the physiological response to that, when another man is on top of you and he's bigger, he's stronger, or he's just better than you, and you can't stop him from strangling you, all the bells and whistles in your head are saying, I'm fucking dying right now.
Yeah.
And dude, this might sound dramatic, but this is the truth. I've had to confront more anxiety on the mats than in fucking combat,
I mean, I certainly can't speak to that. I was about to say that doesn't sound dramatic to me.
Yeah.
Then you brought up combat, and I'm like, well, I can't say that. But no.
Well, bro, I was on Boucher's team for a long time. And
pretty good. He's okay.
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, he's all right.
He's also fucking a Neanderthal. I mean, the dude.
He's a big dude.
He's fucking gigantic.
Long limbs. Yeah.
And that dude, it doesn't matter how good I get. The gap between us is so vast that it never feels like anything ever changes. And I fucking had him on top of me to the point where, I vomited one round. He was just beating the fuck out of me. Mm. And it's funny. I've told the story on the podcast before, but I was like, after the bell went off, I was like, Marcus, are you fucking mad at me or something? Like, that was a different thing. And he goes, Greg, I pretended you were Rodolfo, and it was the finals of the World Championships. And he goes, I wanted to bring that much aggression to you, so no other man can put you through what I just put you through. And I was like, oh, okay, And then I said, fuck, bro, I don't even feel like a viable training partner for you sometimes.
That's a familiar feeling for me.
Yeah,
I feel it all the time.
And then you know what he said to me? Because it's like he was trying to be nice, but it cut to my soul. He goes, no, Greg, that's not true. You're very good for my cardio.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
I was like, cool, man.
We have there's a guy at my academy named Armand de Bruges. He's like the most interesting man in the world, just weirdly smart. Won Pan Ams without giving up a point.
Dang.
And he's 150 pounds soaking wet. And rolling with him in the gi especially, you feel like a little kid rolling with your dad.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who he doesn't do anything like super aggressive. He's not like a genetic freak or anything. I mean, he's a great athlete, of course, but I literally have 80 pounds on the guy. And he's one of those guys who he'll take an inch and he doesn't give it up. And he takes another inch and he doesn't give it. And you just slowly feel yourself getting smothered and strangled by this person who, it looks like I could pick him up with an arm and throw him out the window.
Yeah. And that's actually even worse because to
the ego.
When you look at Marcus, it's like, okay, this dude's a 265 pound super athlete. He should smash me, right? Like you can conceptualize that in your brain. But when, do you know who Lucas Leitch is? Are you familiar with him? So Lucas Leitch had his gym in La Habra, which was a half-hour drive from our gym, and we'd cross-train a lot. And Lucas had this army of purple and brown belts that were all small guys that you would just fucking do whatever they wanted to you. And it's bizarre, just like you said, a guy that you have 50 pounds on that can just manipulate you and outposition you to a point where you have no options. It's fucked up, man.
Yeah, if he wanted to kill you, there's nothing you can do about
Yeah.
it. It's a humbling feeling.
It's like Frank Mir said that about Damian Maia. He goes, because Frank Mir, he was already a UFC heavyweight champion and a good black belt in jiu-jitsu. And he's like, I did a round with Damian Maia, and I realized he could hold me down and have sex with me if he wanted to.
I don't know if my mind would have gone to a place that dark, but okay.
Yeah.
I think that rolling with smaller guys sometimes is harder than rolling with guys of the same size as you that are maybe equally as technical. Just because, one, they can move so much better.
Yeah.
They have a way better gas tank. And they can fit frames into places.
I was just going to say, they can regard in ways that feel like it's defying physics, you know?
Yeah, they find ways to fit into spaces where you feel like you're giving them no space, and they find a way to get that frame in. And their shrimp is a little bit shorter length, and shrimp a little bit better.
So when you met Stefan, did you meet his wife by chance, Rashna?
I don't think so. We were... It was actually, I was at one of my buddy's basements. He has a mat down in his house, and he had a bunch of people over and invited me. And I met Stefan there. We didn't talk a whole lot. Rolled a little bit. His guard was really tough to pass, and he's weirdly strong for the size that he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He owns a rock yard.
A rock yard.
Yeah. So he did a lot of custom like rockeries and stuff. And he built the business now to the point where he doesn't lift a rock ever, you know, he owns it and operates it from Utah now, and it's here locally. But a lifetime of moving stones around, I don't care how much time you spend in the CrossFit gym, you can't catch up to that, you know?
Yeah, you're lifting weights all day, every day.
And there's dudes, you know, I've trained with dudes that are like, that pour concrete or granite masons, and it's like, fuck, man. It's just a different thing, you know?
Yeah, that grown man strength. Mm-hmm.
So I just want to fucking learn about you. Like, where did you grow up? Where did it start? What took you towards martial arts? All that shit, man.
Yeah, trauma, maybe. No, so I grew up in Central Oregon. I grew up in a town called Redmond, which is right next to Bend, if you've ever heard of Bend.
Okay, yeah.
So it's really rural farming, ranching community, a lot of blue collar. I was raised a pretty blue collar way. My parents are beef ranchers down in Central Oregon now. My dad built custom homes. But I was into everything. I wrestled. I played. This fly is killing me. But I wrestled. I played football. I ended up going to Oregon State University in Corvallis.
Okay.
Played 5 years of football. Had a pretty good experience, but didn't really go the way that I planned. I was hoping to play beyond that, and injuries. I didn't make the best decisions with my health, just in terms of playing on injuries, and just it's a brutal sport. I don't know that I would play football again, given the chance.
Dude, I have jiu-jitsu students that always want to take off for football season, and it's like I don't want to talk them out of doing other things as kids, but what I see is when they come back, their jiu-jitsu's taking a hit, and what are you getting out of football?
Unless you're going to play at the next level.
And
college football was a cool experience. I don't know if it was cool enough to be worth all the injuries that I took. But I mean, it's part of what shaped me. It's part of what led me here. So, I mean, I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah.
But I got done with football, and before I ever went to my first, I wrestled in high school. I had a couple roommates down at Oregon State that were wrestlers, and I was around that community, and I just knew that I wanted to fight. Not even jiu-jitsu. I just knew that I wanted to fight because it was a challenge. I wasn't going to play football ever again. So before I even went to my first jiu-jitsu class, I knew that was the road I was going to take. So I ended up in Portland. I did an internship at a gym up there. My degree was exercise phys.
Okay, that's what mine's in too.
Yeah. So you're clearly a genius. You're a smart guy,
bro. It's funny because when I decided to go to college, I was like, well, I have to go because the Army will pay for my degree and it's free. Mm-hmm. So I should just do something I'm interested in.
Yeah, same.
And I never made 1 cent off of that degree.
I made very few. I don't use it now. But I was wanting to go into I was pre-physical therapy. I wanted to go into physical therapy. Then I realized I could go be a personal trainer at a 24-hour fitness and if I did well with sales, I could make almost the same amount without going to grad school.
Yeah.
Not that it matters because I never did. I don't do either one of those things anymore. But I got into jiu-jitsu. My team is Impact Jiu-Jitsu down in Portland area. Fought for like 10 years professionally. You know, and just that didn't take off the way that I wanted it to either. And I'm kind of an all or nothing person. I'm 0% or I'm 1,000%.
Yeah.
So
Which is very common for men that are kind of cut from our cloth, you know?
yeah, there's maybe a personality trait or whatever. But I mean, in my head, I was a UFC champion. I used to do cardio and imagine myself fighting John Jones.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Well, bro, here's the thing though, because people might laugh at that, right? But if you're pursuing something and you're putting all your energy into it, and bro, you can get severely hurt in a fucking local amateur fight. Like the stakes are still high.
Oh yeah. So
why would you go into that without any other mindset other than like, hey, I got to get really fucking good at this and I have to be serious, you know?
well, it's one of those things where if you're not 100% committed, you're gonna get hurt. And you know, if you're gonna do anything at all, why not try to be the best at it? You know, that was my attitude. And I was fair. I was pretty gifted. I had a 5-2 record. I lost one fight that I don't think I should have lost. I got choked. I got choked unconscious about 15 feet from Dana White.
Oh shit.
that show that they do with Dean Thomas and Matt Serra, and maybe there's a fourth guy, but that was kind of the point where I was like, I mean, that hurt, and I felt like that was a fight that I should have won. Not to take anything away from the guy that beat me, but it was just kind of like, all right, well.
Were you having success, and then he just found your back and?
So I was having success right up to there. I mean, I've had a lot of stuff happen the last few years of my life. I had 2 kids in a relationship where I wasn't married. That relationship wasn't going to work. We ended up splitting right before the pandemic. I had an injury, just huge life changes. You know, you can't train anyway because they closed down everything.
Yeah.
Lost sponsorships. I was fully sponsored for a while just from a few local businesses. It's not like I was making any money, but my bills were covered and, you know, I had my direction. Totally blew up my right shoulder. Took a fight on that with one arm, basically. I fought Julius Angliscus, who is I think he's top 5 Bellator now, just an absolute stud. Makes me look like a baby. And I'm a pretty big guy.
Yeah.
He made me look tiny. So I went into that fight. He just, like, even if I'm fully healthy, full training camp, that's a tough fight. So I fought LFA against Julius. He beat the brakes off me. Rough one. And then that was right before the pandemic. So pandemic happens. There's no training anyway. I had to go find a new job, lost my sponsorships, was no longer personal training because gyms are closed. And then got another job, trained another 2 years. And I was like, okay, it's make or break time, you know? So got a contract with a company, had a fight in Colorado, did a full training camp, came into it pretty healthy, best shape I've ever been in. Dana White's going to be there. You know, it's like, this is my chance. Went out and got ninja choked in the first round, choked unconscious, came to, and I was like, well, it was a good run. Maybe it's time to do something else. And I'll still do another fight, I hope, at some point.
How old are you now?
33.
Okay.
I'm still relatively, I got a lot of miles, but, you know, still relatively young, so I could still do one more, and just because I want to, not because I'm trying to take that any direction anymore.
Just go out on better terms.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I'm curious to see, just without the stress of having to win every fight. I kind of want to just see how I perform when it's just fun and it's not a career.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do construction now. I worked for a company for a while just as a sales rep and a designer. Eventually decided that, you know, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I making all this money for somebody else? So started my own business in June this year. And, you know, right in the thick of that, this is just the next chapter.
Yeah.
Know? And one of those, so I've started 3 businesses this year, that and another project. And the podcast, I guess you could call it a business. I'm not looking at it as a business because it's really more of a passion project for me. Or well, maybe not even necessarily a passion project. I see a need, and I feel like I just feel like I need to speak and put my thoughts out there. So I decided to do that as a side project as well.
Yeah. No, and I'm telling you, bro, like it starts to get bizarre once you start putting your thoughts and your perspectives out there. Inevitably, someone's going to be listening somewhere that's going to come across it, and it's going to have a massive impact on their life.
I hope so. And I think I said this in that clip that I sent you, that little 15-minute intro. I'm not necessarily trying to go be Howard Stern or Joe Rogan or anything like that. And if that would have happened, cool. But for me, I see a lot of pain in the world, and I see a lack of a lot of values. I think we're kind of culturally sick right now.
For sure.
And I think that the only thing that repairs those issues is people like us who see something and they say what they believe to be true.
What do you think is the foundational problem that's causing that cultural sickness?
I don't know that it's one thing in particular. I could say from my perspective, it boils down to two things. Well, one thing in particular, but another thing that's a big part of it. I think that it's the way that we parent and raise kids, particularly as fathers.
Yep.
Mothers too. But I think it's that. And I think another piece that affects that is actually the way that men and women treat each other in relationships, in the dating culture, in just the way that we honor each other in the world these days. I think that from my perspective, I think most things stem from that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone could really argue with that, you
It'd
know?
be tough too.
Because they say, I mean, what percentage of children are being raised with one or the other parent, like almost not present at all now?
80%, something like that.
Yeah, dude.
I knew the stats off the top of my head. I forgot them since then, but it's something like 80% of kids grow up without a present, involved father in the home.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I'm not my parents were divorced when I was like 15, but my dad was still around. But there was a lot of trauma around that, just because they weren't at their best. And,
Yeah.
and that's not, and I don't talk about my parents on this stuff just out of respect. And, those are conversations for me to have with them, and they did the best that they could with what they had and what they were taught. That being said, I mean, there's a lot of stories out there that are not mine and stuff that I see all the time. 'Cause I've been a personal trainer. You've been a coach. I've been a coach, and we've had students that come from really good, predictable, reliable households. And we've seen the opposite. And it carries a lot of weight, and when you look at, I think I was listening to the Sean Ryan show a while ago, and he had a guest on. They were talking about fatherlessness, and he said the actual stat, and they said that if it were a disease, it would constitute a national emergency, fatherlessness.
Yeah.
And
that's like looking at measurable data of like
data.
all the issues that it causes with people.
That's looking at the lack of a father in the home.
Well, and it might have been your fucking clip you sent me, but in addition to that, like most educators, the overwhelming percentage of them are female. And so when you take these kids that don't have any masculine influence in their life at home, they're not getting it elsewhere either, for the most part, unless you go seek that out.
Yeah.
And
we could talk for hours probably just about the education system alone, public schools, and how that's failing. And there's huge deficiencies there.
Well, bro, I mean, put on your tinfoil hat, but
I'm there with you,
bro,
dude.
I think it's by design.
I do too. At this point, I do too.
I think, and I used to think, and I was part of the government in one capacity or another, as a first responder, as a law enforcement officer, as a soldier. And I started to see more and more things that I chalked up as incompetence, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think you can look at what's happening nationwide with all of our government agencies and just keep chalking it up to incompetence. Like, it wouldn't be, if they would give us a budget to be able to fucking build programs to make young people strong, we could fucking do it. Mm-hmm. I see it on the mats all the time. But think if they could incorporate some of these things into public education to make people strong, to make people confident, to make people have a sense of self-belief or a sense of pride. Teach people about fucking like spirituality, not religion, because like everyone's going to freak out when we say that, but just how to like meditate and ground yourself, breathing exercises, things to go internal and like be able to fucking find peace, and all these things that I haven't fucking started to figure out until my 40s. If we could teach this stuff to our children, man, they'd have a leg up. I don't think they want people to have a leg up. I think they want people to leave the public education system and just go into the workforce as worker bees that do what they're told and don't think bigger. And one thing that you said that I think is super fucking important is you came to a realization as what 33-year-old man or 32-year-old man, where you're like, I'm done making someone else rich. I need to do this for me. Mm-hmm. I think everybody should arrive at that point at some point. Like, you have to Obviously, if you're a kid, you go through high school, you go through college, you join the workforce. When you're 22 years old, you don't have the capacity to be calling the shots and running the show. But that should be the end goal. The end goal shouldn't be chasing a retirement at 60 and where you just fucking are on the fucking tit of some other either pension or government agency for the rest of your life.
When your life's already over. You
Yeah.
already spent your whole life, laboring away, not living your life.
And then statistically, once you do drop your bags at whatever industry you were a part of, you got 5 years and then your heart explodes, because
Once you lose your sense of purpose.
yeah, exactly. And people's identity is built around whatever they do professionally. And it's fucking sad, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm kind of the point now where I would never call myself a conspiracy theorist. I'd say people that are in power do conspire.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's people with basically absolute power. I would argue that it's not that necessarily that the public school system has to be changed or that anything government has to be changed. I just think government has to get smaller, and I think individual sovereignty needs to be a priority in the culture. I think that you're about to get that fly.
I'm about to get that fucking fly.
Have you seen those? Salt guns?
Oh, see that?
Got them.
Fuck yeah. All right. That you guys will no longer be distracted by the fly for the remainder of this podcast.
What was I saying though?
Individual sovereignty.
Individual sovereignty needs to be, I believe, a staple of the culture because we're at this point where everything's convenient and easy. Everything's outsourced. We look to the government to solve problems when that's not the primary role of government. The primary role of government, as it's intended to be used, is national security and to keep citizens from treading on each other, and that's it. Bro,
I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, that's what it was. That was the original intent. You're not supposed to get rich going into politics. It's not supposed to make your life better. It's supposed to be neutral. It's supposed to be hands off.
Well, it's supposed to be serving in politics too is supposed to be a burden.
Should be, yeah.
It's not something like a career field that people should be pursuing,
Where you go in with $100,000 or $150,000 salary and you come out worth $100 million.
Yeah, i.e. Nancy Pelosi.
Who knew? Yeah, who knows how that happened?
Have you seen that? There's a guy on Instagram, and it's like he calls it like political tracker or something, where he's built an app that just you can invest in everything that they invest in.
I should probably get on that.
It just mirrors what they're doing.
So I could see what Paul Pelosi's investing in and I could go in and buy the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
The same day.
And he has different programs where you can like mirror Dan Crenshaw or mirror Nancy Pelosi. And it's like, well,
sign me the fuck up.
Hey, if they're like, they don't want to call it insider trading, but they get to have say in how everything plays out.
If you did that, you'd go to jail.
Of course, dude.
If you knew somebody and you knew what policies were coming up and you bought stocks accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. And bro, like, fuck, dude, that's a whole nother podcast. But like, at some point, these fucking people that are taking advantage of the system and getting rich off of our backs, taxing the fuck out of us on every single thing. Like you see Gavin Newsom just signed some new bill to where firearms have some massive
15% tax or something like that.
And it's like, what part of shall not be infringed are you motherfuckers not able to comprehend?
Well, and it's not your fucking job.
Yeah.
Your job is national security and prevent citizens from treading on each other. And not only are they not, they're involved in it. As we saw through the pandemic, they're actively involved in citizens treading on each other with crony capitalism and being involved in, the ties to Moderna, the ties to Pfizer, government involvement in media, government involvement in like Facebook, like all the memos that came out at once Elon Musk took over Twitter.
Yeah.
And you see how they're involved with them directly. It's straight out of 1984.
And that motherfucker, like, he put them all on blast, And then,
God bless him for it.
And the weird thing about it is there are a certain amount of people that like, it's almost like Stockholm syndrome. They want to support this government that is fucking using them as the useful idiot.
Being gaslit, yeah.
And they don't even fucking notice it, dude. And again, as long as Twitter's working and their house is 70 degrees and they have food in their fridge, why would I want to push back on the system at all? But like, maybe getting uncomfortable is what we fucking need.
For sure. Not even maybe, for sure. It's what we need. And your slogan on your podcast, no one's coming to save you. Mine is going to be something like purpose over pleasure.
Yeah.
Meaning over comfort, that kind of thing. Like there, and you probably saw in that clip I sent you, I kind of briefly mentioned Andrew Huberman because he talks there's this video, it's like a 2-hour video on dopamine hacking that he has out there. And a thing that I took away from that after I listened to it is like seeking is the reward. It's not necessarily the hitting the end goal. It's good. It's doing the work is where you get that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And when another thing you asked me earlier, to kind of backtrack a little bit, where I think that cultural sickness comes from. It is lack of fathers. It is lack of involved fathers and mothers. I think there's deficiencies on both ends. It is the way that men and women treat each other in the home, in the dating culture. But that stems from this obsession that we have with comfort and pleasure over purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
And that's why, like Jordan Peterson blew up because he's selling responsibility. And everybody's like, well, you have a fully male audience and like, clearly you're sexist and you're, everything's all about domination of men and the patriarchy. It's like, no. We have a society where men are craving responsibility. Women too, for the most part. But I mean, the reason 80% of that guy's following is men is because he's telling them, hey, look, you have an opportunity to be responsible and to pursue purpose and meaning and fulfillment in your life. It's not about the pursuit of happiness and the pursuit of pleasure and comfort. Mm-hmm. That'll kill you. There's that saying, comfort is a slow death.
Yeah.
That's totally real.
Have you read the Comfort Crisis?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
And I mean, it's along those same lines. And it's that, and what's interesting is like when men like Jordan Peterson, or I feel like Joe Rogan's really like expanded his thinking when it comes to this over the last couple of years. And as soon as people in powerful positions shine a spotlight on that, what do they try and do?
Get rid of you.
Get rid of
Russell Brand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Who could have saw that coming,
dude? But like even what were they saying that Jordan Peterson he needs to attend like sensitivity training, or we're going to take his license away?
They did take his license.
Did they
to teach, or they took away his license to practice clinical psychology, I believe.
And you know what? Fuck you. He doesn't need that.
Fuck you, Canada.
Yeah, he's doing more right now than he could ever do, practicing fucking clinical psychology with one patient in front of him.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Well, the reason not the primary reason, but part of the reason where I decided to start my project is because I attended a lecture of his. And I think I told you that story.
Yeah, that one up here, right? In Everett?
I drove up to Everett. I drove 4 hours here and I drove 4 hours back. I had 8 hours on the road to think. I don't know, maybe it was like a 3-hour lecture. I don't remember how long it was. But there was something pivotal that he said in that convicted me. And I already told you this, but for the sake of the podcast, I'll say this, or like you heard it on that clip that I sent you. They have this QR code up on the screen before it starts, and you can scan the code and then you can send in questions. And his wife comes out at the end and she reads all the questions to him. And one of the questions, he didn't answer the question, but because there's not really a good answer to it. One of the last questions that he got was, how do we solve the homelessness crisis in Seattle?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know what you should do about it. And then he went into this tangent and he's like, these things are so incredibly nuanced. And we have this idea that there's throw more money at it, or, give the government more money and they'll fix it. They'll throw more money at it. They'll find the people. And clearly that doesn't work. I mean, the war on drugs was a massive success.
Yeah.
The war on poverty was awesome. They clearly did great with that.
Well, and you have these people that are tasked with like, the
farming homelessness.
Yeah, exactly.
In California.
And those fucking people are making $300,000 a year, and the problem is not getting better. It's getting worse.
If they fix the problem, they're
exactly.
out of a
Yep.
job. Yeah. And
so like, they're not incentivized to fix it.
Yeah. And to go, so back to that, the way that he answered the question though was basically, he said, I don't know what you should do about it, but to summarize everything he said, coming from a Neanderthal, not near the intellectual capacity that he has. But he said, the first thing that you do about problems is you start talking about it. Mm-hmm. And he kind of stopped. He stopped mid thought and he goes, listen, if something bothers you, it's your problem. And I was convicted when I heard that, because I constantly complain about shit like that.
Yeah.
I think we all do. And I don't think any of us are not guilty of that. But he says, if you have an issue with the school board, you need to be taking steps to be involved with the schools. Mm-hmm. If you have an issue with the government, you need to be taking steps to be involved directly with government. And I heard that and I was driving back like I said, I had 4 hours to think driving from Everett down to Tualatin. And I'm like, well, fuck, what do I do? Because I don't want to just sit by and stand idly by and just let stuff happen. Like, it's not in my DNA to, be an observer. And I'm like, okay, well, you start talking about it, like, and this is where that imposter syndrome comes in. Like, to think that my opinions and thoughts carry weight within public discourse is crazy to me. But I'm on the road coming back, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna start a podcast.
Yeah.
And like 2 days later, I called my friend. And this is another funny example of how God, the universe, whatever it is, works in your favor when you start taking those steps. I got home and I called my buddy Jake the next day, and he's got a small gym in Lake Oswego. He's got his own podcast called Fitness Nomads, and I did it with him like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. And he's like a tech guy. I'm tech illiterate. I don't know. If I had to set this stuff up, I'd have to get a lot of help. So I call him, and I go, hey, I'm just putting some feelers out. What would it cost me to get set up for podcasts with the stuff that you have? He's like, well, why would you get your own? Just come use mine. Because I got an empty my old massage therapy room in the gym is empty. Just come in and shoot an episode in there. So within 2 days, I went in and shot that little, I won't call it a pilot, but that little introductory episode that I sent you. And it's just, I think when you're on the right path, stuff feels right. Like you feel like the sense of peace, like you're doing the right thing.
For sure, dude.
But that all stemmed from, he did what he did. Whatever that bill was in Canada, he spoke out against it. He says, no, you're not going to compel speech. I study this stuff. This is what happens when you start compelling speech. And then, he got canceled. Traumatic, probably a horrible experience for him as he went through it, but look where it pushed him.
Yeah.
And now he's, best-selling author. I think he had a book out before that, but he's impacting so many more lives because of the way he stood up to that, me being one of them. And clearly I'm not the only one. But that was the thing. That was the catalyst where I heard that. And I'm like, I need to do something because I'm doing absolutely nothing right now. And the guilt is bothering me.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's a balancing act. Everything in life is a dichotomy, right? Because there's so many things in life that are fucking irritating. There's so many things that piss you off. You pick up your phone and you scroll Instagram for 5 minutes, and there's 100 things that, like, for me, it makes me want to get my fucking Norwegian battle axe out and start beheading people, right? And then you have to be like, well, fuck, man. Like the saying goes, like, don't put energy into things that you can't affect, right? So if you're just spun up and your fucking blood is filled with cortisol and you're pissed off, and it's things that are happening in France or things that are happening on the other side of the world, and you feel like, I don't have the ability to affect change, but I'm still allowing it to affect me emotionally, that's a bad spot to be in. Mm-hmm. Because what it's doing is you're taking in all the bad, but you're not purging that out with any good. And for me, and like, dude, I don't know what the right answer necessarily is, because I do episodes where I fucking vent about stuff, right? But I always say, like, I vent about it because we don't want to be an ostrich with our head in the sand and just pretend everything is fine, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you don't want to allow that to consume you to the point where your day-to-day life is now affected and you're now, like, in this miserable state because of all these motherfuckers that are out there doing these corrupt things and these egregious acts. And kind of where I've landed, and I'm assuming you're an Andy Frisella fan. Are you?
You know what? The first time I heard of him, I believe I listened to one of your podcasts when we started talking, and I think I heard you mention him.
Okay.
Aside from that, I don't know much about him.
Bro,
First Form?
First Form. But like that's the company he built, right? But he's so much bigger than that because he's pushing, his whole thing is, you'll see it. It's out on my wall out there. I have it fucking his slogan printed on the wall of the Jiu-Jitsu Academy for all the kids to see. Personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. So like, you can be pissed off at all of these different things that we're being subjected to, and all of these fucking unjust laws and all of these taxes and all the things that we feel like we're fucking being enslaved. We're not free right now. Yeah. You know,
I 100% agree with you.
When over 50% of our money is taken from the government under threat of violence. Like, if you don't fucking give the government the money that they want, they're going to kick your door down and they're going to put you in a cage. That doesn't fucking feel like freedom, you know?
Well, it isn't.
But what's the right answer? Is the right answer a revolution? I mean, at some point that may be a viable option, right? But in the meantime, what can you do? Well, you can be personally excellent and you can build a strong body. You can become intelligent. You can build your wealth. You can build all the things that set you free from their system. And when you do those things, now you're not going to be a slave to their system. Like, sure, they may be taking 50% of your money still, but if you have enough money to where you can still go do the things that you want to do and pursue the things that you want to pursue and influence your community in the way that you feel they need to be influenced, that's the first step, man. And for me, I push it on my podcast all the time. I think the foundational element of that is a strong physical body, right? Like that's baseline. Because if you're weak physically, you're going to be weak emotionally, and you're not going to be like someone that can barely walk up a flight of stairs. They're not going to have the courage to be defiant or confront a problem, or the ability, yeah. You know? And I think a lot of people are living in this place that they built in their head where it's like, and I see it on like the right side to the point where it's like, it's frustrating because it's like, maybe their political views are aligned with me, but these people go out and they buy a bunch of guns and they just drink beer and eat pizza and they're 100 pounds overweight and they have a fucking NRA sticker on the back of their truck. And it's like, dude.
But they're not trained to use the firearm.
You are fucking sick. You are falling victim of their plan. And it's like every single aspect of our society is now, it seems like it's built around making you fat, sick, weak, and compliant.
And it's working.
And it goes back to the public education system. Like, I don't think they want free thinkers. I think they want you to just do what you're told, be a good little boy. And bro, J6 was a perfect example of this too. Because if you show any like resentment towards our government, bro, they fucking target you. And it's our rights as citizens to be able to say, I think our government's corrupt. I think our government's being ran by shitty people. I think they're doing things to people that are unconstitutional. And as soon as you stand up and voice that, fuck, dude, they try and come after you, you know? And for me, that's more of a, that just assures that the things that I'm thinking and the path that I'm on is actually correct, you know?
I would agree. And I think that whether it's now or whether it's 1,000 years from now, I think as soon as it starts moving that direction, it needs to be course corrected. And it sounds like there's a lot of people who would hear what you just said and they'd say, well, Greg, you sound crazy. Mm-hmm. One, you're not crazy because you're aware that it probably sounds crazy.
I know a lot of people think I'm crazy.
Yeah, and it sounds extreme, but you're aware that maybe it does sound extreme. So it's like, well, maybe not so much. But the thing is, like, even if we're 100 miles away from this direction, but we start moving that direction, eventually we're going to get there, and it requires course correcting.
Exactly. A 1 degree shift off of your azimuth right now may not sound dramatic, and it might not feel dramatic in the next year, but I'm looking at my fucking children's lives, you know? And it's funny because one thing that I hear often is when I really push back against the government or I push back against the COVID narrative. And I did that as a police officer. And one thing people would say to me all the time, they're like, Greg, you got fucking a bunch of kids, man. You got to make sure that you can take care of them. You got to make sure that you keep your job. Your career is like, your children's future is more important than your political beliefs and all these things. And it's like, guys, you're not seeing the big picture. Like, that is why I want to push back on all this stuff and be as vocal and as active in this scene, because bro, if our kids, when they're adults, if we haven't done anything, when we're old men and we look at ourselves in the mirror and everybody's in fucking the 15-minute cities and you can't fucking have this, you can't have a stove in your house anymore, and you can't do this.
And you'll like it.
Yeah, bro.
Or you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, and that's what they want to push us towards. And I'd rather fucking die right now knowing that I was standing for right than just play it safe so my kids can fucking... I've told my kids, I've sat them down and talked to them about it. I'm like, this could end up with us starving in the woods at some point. And that may sound dramatic. You'll be cold and you'll be tired and you'll feel some fear and you'll feel a lot of discomfort. But just know on the other side of that, our family's going to be the closest it's ever been. We're going to be surrounded by people that care about us immensely. And the human experience needs to go back to a place of discomfort and pain and suffering to correct this course. And I just don't think there's any other way around it. One thing I've said on the podcast often, the human experience from the beginning of time until probably 200 years ago was one of adversity. If you wanted to eat, you had to go fucking either grow your food or forage or hunt. None of that shit is easy. If you wanted to be warm, then you better make sure that your shelter is sufficient and that you planned ahead and you have enough firewood to last you the winter. Like, basic necessities of life required a lot of arduous tasks to be conducted on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what keeps us grounded. You've said it, like, seeking pleasure is that's not the answer, right? And honestly, I think that there's a yin and yang to everything that we do. And if you can't have peaks without valleys. You can't have hot without cold. The human experience is supposed to be a cycle going through those different things. Like, you think anyone in the Sudan has ADHD or depression? You know what I'm saying?
They don't have time to be depressed.
They don't have time for that because their life is adversity. And I honestly think the American culture and the American way of life is so built around keeping everybody fat and happy. We actually miss that adversity. And now we're imposing it on ourselves. And we're imposing it on ourselves in a lot of different ways. But a lot of it is our mental health. I heard a statistic the other day, and it was on Instagram, so it has to be true.
Of course.
But it said the average mental health of Americans today would land you in a psych ward 50 years ago.
I can speak to that.
And it's like,
Which is crazy to think about. But I'm reminded of a quote, the first thing that you were saying about just where we're at in our government culture or the climate of the government right now. I wish I could remember who said it, but it's whether or not you're interested in politics, you can rest assured that politics will take an interest in you.
Yeah.
Whether you're involved or not, if you're going to be the ostrich with your head in the sand, or if you're going to be, taking steps and with regard to your kids and their future and their kids, you are doing the right thing because you have a responsibility for their futures and to rear them and to give them the tools that they're going to need to navigate the world. And if we're leaving behind a shit world for our kids, then we're failing.
Exactly, dude.
So it's not about what's immediately convenient. I mean, obviously you got to feed your kids and, take care of them, but the way to do that is not by being subservient.
No, it's about being defiant as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
This country was founded on defiance.
Over a 3% tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about that.
Bro, and again, it's funny. Like, a lot of these things I know I've talked about on the show before, but like a perfect example of this is this gym has been open since 2015. You drove into the parking lot, you found a place to park your car. You did okay, right? Wasn't a big deal. You're able to park your car and walk in the building okay?
Sure.
Well, the county just informed me that I never had a parking lot assessment. And being a business in the county, I have to have a parking lot assessment done to be recognized by Snohomish County as a viable business for cars to park at. Now, they have their reasoning behind it because they're like, if your parking lot is not set up and structured properly, in the event of an emergency, first responders can't get in here, right? And so it's always shit like that, right? Is it the government's job to tell me how to park cars in my business? I don't think so. But this has been going on, and it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? Every little thing they nickel and dime you at, and now it's to the point where if you don't comply, they shut you down. Like, I already got a cease and desist order that I pushed back against, and they ended up rescinding it. But part of rescinding it was, well, you got to get your parking lot assessment. And I'm like, okay, I can play your game, right? And that's what I told my wife. I'm like, we've been open a long time. And she looked into it. Every business in the county had to do this parking lot assessment. It's part of opening a business in the county. So is this the hill worth dying on? I don't know what the answer is, because if I push back on this and then they pull my business license, I'll still be teaching jiu-jitsu, telling them to fuck off with my body armor and my rifle at my front desk. But then they're going to put a lien on my property. Then I can never buy another, like all these little things. Then they send you to collections. The system is set up to force you into compliance. And the worst part about it is the parking lot assessment is looking at costing about $20,000.
To assess this?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like
That's
got
what,
like an acre of gravel out
that's
there.
what I'm saying, right? And so
The
it's like,
government sucks at everything it does, though.
bro.
This isn't new.
And so now I have to have my parking lot officially recognized by doing this assessment. And then, of course, guess what the assessment comes with? A parking lot fee,
Of course.
to the county.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck, man. At what point do I say, fuck you? Come and fucking get me. And I know that day's coming. I don't know if that parking lot structure is the hill worth dying on. But at some point, we have to start drawing these hard lines and saying, I'm not playing your fucking game anymore. And another, one of our slogans that we say on the show is courage is contagious, right? If everybody would just say, hey, on our own private property, I own this fucking lot. I bought this lot in 2003. We don't need the government to approve how we park cars on it. Fuck you. If everybody would do that unanimously, and the weird thing, this is a local issue. This is a county issue, right? But this government overreach is happening at every single step of the way. And it's like, we have all been indoctrinated, me included, to where this is just how business works. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm having a real hard time wrapping my head around how I have to pay them all this money so my teammates can continue to train with me,
The government is an industry with a monopoly on violence.
100%.
And the hard part because I'm right with you. Like if there was a point where we said, you know what, 50% of our income is too high of a tax and unanimously we're just going to refuse to pay that percentage. Here's the percentage we pay.
Yes.
They wouldn't be able to do anything about it. However,
Nothing.
The hard part about that is, courage is contagious, but there has to be the first person to do that.
Yep.
If you're going to lead that, you're going to get absolutely crucified.
And what I've seen personally is men and women that I've held in high regard, people that I think are tough, people that I think have courage, when their livelihood gets fucking threatened, most cave. Mm-hmm. I actually, I just met a podcast listener when I was down at Glover's Place at Fieldcraft, their grand opening in Provo. And he told me a story. I actually invited him on the show, so I'm not going to tell the whole story. But basically, he was in the military and he was pushing back against the vaccine. He's like, I don't feel comfortable with this vaccine. I've been in the military a long time. He was a pretty high-ranking officer, held a very powerful position. And he said everybody behind closed doors agreed with him that we're going to unanimously push back. The whole squadron is going to say no together. What are they going to fire all of their pilots? Like, they're going to have a problem, right? And then their battalion commanders called like a fucking formation, and he's like, hey, there's rumors going around that some of you guys are going to push back and you're going to band together and refuse an order. Let's just get this out of the way right now. If you're going to do that, raise your hand. And he was the only one.
Oh,
he said every single person that said they would do it with him fucking collapsed in a moment. And he was in the front row. He said he raised his hand and then he started looking back and forth and he realized where the rubber meets the road, most people chose to be compliant.
Yeah, words are pretty easy.
And words are easy. And I saw that with behind closed doors, 100% of police officers agreed with me.
And didn't you say that your chief or your head of your department agreed with you?
Even my commander, he's like,
said, I can't publicly.
Yeah, we can't publicly support you. And I'm like, imagine if you did. Imagine if a chief of police or a commander in Seattle said, you know what? We're not going to do this. I don't stand for this. And it's not that hard to do. You know what I mean? But you're risking your livelihood. And most men and women aren't willing to do that. And, I spent 10 years in the professional law enforcement. I know that most cops are good people. And people get pissed when I say that because a lot of people are like, fuck cops. They're just enforcement of fucking government tyranny. And I go back and forth on that because I know the profession is filled with good people. Mm-hmm. I was immersed in the culture. I know tons of cops. Fucking a lot of my students are cops. I know they're good people. But when it comes time, will they support the people or will they enforce government orders? And I always want to land on they'll support the people. And I hope that that's true. But based on what I've seen, I have to question that. And a lot of people are questioning that. And bro, that's a scary place to be because you just said they have a monopoly on violence.
Yeah, well, if you refuse to pay your taxes, what do? They come to collect. If you don't want to pay, they're going to take you to jail. If you don't want to go to jail,
They're going to kill you.
you're going to get shot.
Yeah. And bro, like, and I know, like, I know I'm a fucking wild man and I'm dramatic sometimes, but when I publicly defied the lockdowns, right? I closed the gym for 2 weeks because it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I'm not a fucking doctor. I'm not a scientist. This was all new. And it's like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, I guess it's 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Everybody kind of unanimously agreed that's okay, right? And then we all saw what started to happen. I said, we're opening up. And I'm not going to put tape on my windows and keep the doors shut and tell people to park out back. I'm not playing all that shit. If people want to train jiu-jitsu with me, they're welcome to train. If they don't fucking come train. Mm-hmm. Let me know. We cancel your contract. It's not a big deal. Or we'll put you on freeze until you're comfortable. It's not my job to tell other people what to do. But if you want to train with me, the gym is open. Mm-hmm. And bro, I was bringing my rifle and my body armor to practice. And I told my wife, I said, if they think they're going to make a spectacle out of me and yard me out of here in handcuffs, today's the day I die. It's not tough guy talk. It's not me trying to fucking be a martyr. It's just me trying to run my business. And if they won't let me, I fought fucking wars for a decade over shit that was way less important to me than how I feed my fucking children. And if they want to take that from me and I'm not willing to fight for it, what kind of a fucking man am I? You know, it's crazy, dude.
There's a story I'm reminded of, and I wish I could remember. I don't even know what the fight was over, but this is a like post World War II story somewhere down in the South. There was a community with a bunch of World War II vets, and they took over a court. I can't remember what it was over, but basically there was some sort of like there was police corruption or something, or they basically went down and took over a courthouse, and they said, no, we just fought in a war for this. We're not going to come home and be told what we're doing. They went down and took over a courthouse and won. So that's not going to happen anymore. I wish I could remember more details of that story. I know I just butchered that, but I'll look it up and I'll give you the information on it later. But like,
well, bro, also like the Bundy Ranch thing. That was in Oregon, right?
That was in Oregon. Yeah, that guy got killed.
Oh, he did get killed.
There was I wish I could Lavoy something. I can't remember. It's been so long. They the FBI set up a roadblock. He got out of the car. They thought he had a gun. They shot him and killed him.
Thought he had a gun.
That was over something, and I don't even remember what that one was about. I think it was about they got hit with some fine because they were doing controlled burns on their own property.
Fuck, man.
And it's been too long. That whole thing was a big clusterfuck too. But my point in bringing that up though is just like we often talk about like the World War II generation, like that was the greatest generation, what they had to deal with. And they weren't going to stand for the. Could you imagine those guys today?
Fuck,
they come and said, hey, you can't operate your business.
Yeah. Dude, we had a local guy right in town here, World War II veteran, and he cut hair. Like, he has a barber shop now, and he's like 90, right? And the story went kind of viral, so maybe you've heard of it, but he's like, I'm going to keep cutting hair. If you don't fucking like it, come and fucking do something about it. Yeah. And had his gun on his hip and just like, dude, I'm a 90-year-old man. I don't give a fuck what you do. And they never did anything overtly to him. They just sent him fine after fine after fine. And now he has some fucking massive amount of fines that he's supposed to pay, but he's 90. He's
refusing to pay.
He's like, I don't fucking care. You know? But dude, like there's strength in numbers. Like for whatever reason, people have lost sight that we the people hold the power.
Yeah, government works for us.
And until people really like it's an easy thing to say. But when it comes time to push back, it's a hard thing to do, but we have to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, I think if we don't, we already see the trajectory that we're on, and it's just not sustainable.
No, it's not. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I believe that a staple of our culture needs to be individual sovereignty. Because we're at this point where we outsource everything, we're taking care of everything's convenient, like an Uber Eats food. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but as it relates to
there is something wrong with that. I'll tell you a story on Uber Eats. Because I was in a hotel and I was down in south of Los Angeles, and I looked up, I forget. I think it was like Chipotle, and it was like a half mile away. And I was like, it's late. I don't feel like that's a mile. I don't feel like walking a mile right now. So I Uber Eats, ordered it, and I get a knock on my hotel, and I open the door, and there's a bag with a burrito in it just sitting there. And I instantly felt like a piece of shit.
I spent $30 for a
Yeah,
burrito.
yeah.
I always feel I don't use it anymore, mostly for that reason.
They say it's going to be $11.50, and then there's like 20 surcharges.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, every little thing counts. You know, every little decision matters.
Well, any entity that's big enough to give you whatever you want is big enough to completely dominate your life.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, let's go rebel and let's go, like maybe at some point, I certainly hope it never gets to that, but I do think it's inevitable, whether it's in 100 years or 1,000 years.
I think it's inevitable too, man. And my biggest fear is it doesn't kick off until we're 80. You know?
So you don't get to be a part of it.
No, I know. I have to fucking.
Well, and that's why you have to pursue the best version of yourself, because you're teaching the next generation.
Yeah.
You're giving them the tools that they're going to need to navigate the world. And part of that is the ability to be, I mean, I feel like I'm saying this word so many times, or this phrase so many times, but to give them the opportunity to be individually sovereign, where they're not being taken care of and everything's not handed to them, because now they can be dominated and controlled at that point.
Yeah.
And that starts with getting rid of the obsession that we have with comfort, pleasure, sensation, getting back. And I'm right there with you, going back to what you were saying about how we need to voluntarily choose to put ourselves through suffering and effort again.
Bro, and it does, people like misconstrue that as
it's not self-hate. It's not sadistic. It's not fetishizing suffering. This is a core part of who we are.
And it doesn't, and like I say it on the show, one of our shirts says microdose adversity. I'm not saying,
I love that.
I'm not saying you have to go out there and be Cam Hanes or David Goggins and just fucking kill yourself, or even the amount that I do, right? Like, but get outside of your comfort zone just a little bit. That's why I think the ice plunge is such a fucking valuable tool. I have a sauna and an ice plunge right here. And I encourage my students to do that for no other reason. And like, I talked about on last week's episode, if you want to know why you should do it physiologically, go listen to Rhonda Patrick, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not her. But what I can tell you is I've been doing it consistently for 8 years. And every single day that I do it, it's just confronting a little discomfort and a little adversity. And bro, when you get out of there, your body is like, fuck yeah, I made it.
It's I think it's something like, it's like 2.5 times dopamine.
Yeah.
It's like, it's 250% increase in dopamine. It's something like it's sustained for like 4 or 5 hours, something like that.
And bro,
I think cocaine's 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And if you fall through the ice, if you're out fucking on the Arctic tundra 300 years ago.
As we all are.
Yeah. And
most of the time.
You fell through the fucking ice. Man, that's dangerous. Like, that's a very fucking dangerous predicament to find yourself in. You got to get warm right now or you're probably going to fucking die. So our physical bodies are still, that is where our fucking brain goes when you get in the cold water. It's like, oh shit, this is not good. But if you can force yourself to do that, when you get out and you start to warm yourself up, and it's like, I almost died today. It's like what we talked about with the fucking guy that's better than you at jiu-jitsu on top of you, right? All of those fucking emotions. And then when you persevere through it, man, you go home and you feel good. Mm-hmm. Something my wife used to tell me, like when I lived in Los Angeles, if I had a bad day at work, because I was a deputy down there and my agency was pretty dysfunctional, like most agencies are. And I would call her when I get off work and she's like, are you going to jiu-jitsu tonight? I said, yeah. She's like, good. I can tell you need it. Because, and that's not like her, that's actually her supporting me.
That's a good partner.
That's a good partner. And bro, when I would go to jiu-jitsu when I was a deputy, it would mean I wouldn't get home in time to really have any quality time with my family. I could kiss the girls goodnight and that would be about the end of it. But I needed that because I had to confront some adversity and I had to you purge a lot of the negativity that's in your body by going through hard things,
I think not to cut you off. But before I forget this, I wanted to say this. There's a super high rate of suicide with like young high school kids right now. I can't remember the stats. But I think that there's a lot of depression, and we kick them drugs and stuff. Like kids are on Ritalin and Adderall from the time they're little kids because they can't sit still. And
imagine that a little boy doesn't want to sit still.
Shocking,
yeah.
Right? But it's because, and my belief is that shit is too easy and shit is too comfortable, and we're not wired to be that way all
No,
the time.
man.
And you get depressed, you get legitimately depressed. And when you get outside, you get in the sun, you microdose adverse. I love that phrase. I'm going to use that.
I'll have Jenny bring you a microdose adversity shirt when we're done here.
Yeah, I love it.
Are you an extra large?
Extra large.
Extra large? All right.
But I really believe that a big reason why we see such a high rate of depression, high rate of suicides in young kids. I mean, obviously it's lack of the family unit. The family unit's kind of fallen apart for the most part, but shit's too easy and we're not wired to be that way. And you get depressed when you don't do that, when you don't put yourself in those situations where you know, whether it's mental, physical, those little micro traumas that we experience. You know, that's why every culture before us, like every tribal culture ever, has had a rite of passage.
Of
ceremony.
course. You go out in the woods for a week and you come back and you're a man or whatever it is.
Getting your hand bitten by ants.
Yeah, the bullet ant glove.
Yeah,
that's right.
There's crazy stuff, and it's because they're voluntarily putting themselves through trauma. You know, because it's a necessary part of your development.
Yeah.
And we don't, that'd be crazy if you started doing stuff like that.
Bro, you'd go to jail.
You go to jail.
You made your kid put your hand and put his hand in a glove full of ants.
You put a spike through your chest and hung by it for a day.
Oh, the Sundance?
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I was where was I just watching something about that? And I was like, I wonder if they'd still do those anywhere.
I'm sure. Well, they're still uncontacted tribes. Imagine the stuff that they're doing. But and not to say, I'm not saying, hey, we should probably do stuff like that. Like put your kid's hand in a glove and let them get bit by ants until they hallucinate. Like I'm not saying stuff like that.
Yeah, but there is an element of putting people through arduous things to help them grow. Like when I went through U.S. Army Airborne School, right? I went through in 2000. And I was like one of the first generations where they didn't punch your wings into your chest, right? You can't do that to soldiers anymore because that's hazing. But the thing is, like, there's supposed to be an element of pride in completing a hard course in the military. And, you know, that little celebration at the end, that tradition, it comes with some pain, it comes with some blood. And people leave that feeling a sense of pride because they felt like they went through something and they accomplished something.
Think about how good you felt your first belting ceremony.
100%.
When you got hit with belts, you walk the gauntlet.
Yeah, dude.
You guys do that here?
We don't do the hits. But no, you're right, dude. There is an element of that's like, hey, this sucks and I'm better for it now. Mm-hmm. You know, just on Tuesday, I actually had a very powerful experience with Levi, who's Angie's middle child, who I've been a father figure in his life since he was a little boy. And he's a grown ass man now. He's the same weight as me and he's ripped. He's athletic as fuck. And I had him in a mounted triangle. And you know how you can apply the pressure on a mounted triangle really incrementally, right? I could have just applied 100% and got a tap. And I was like, I'm going to make him suffer. Yeah, I'm going to use this as a teaching moment. And I applied like 80% and then I just held it. And people that don't understand this will think this is sadistic, right? And I was looking down at him and he was like going through some fucking adversity. And then I saw his hand go like this. And then I could see his eyes were closed, but I could see him thinking through it. And then he closed his hand again and started using it to try and create some space. And like, he really fought through it. And I let him fight through those emotions until the bell went off. And then I pulled him aside after practice. I said, "You thought about quitting tonight?" He goes, "I was this close to quitting." He goes, "I wanted to quit. It was not good." And he goes, "But right before I tapped, I decided, you know what? I can dig a little deeper and keep fighting." I said, "I know." And it's weird because you probably see this. You've been a martial artist long enough. When you're either rolling or sparring with someone that doesn't have your level of experience, you really get to turn the dial up to meet them where they need to get met, right? Mm-hmm. And so I told him, I said, "Bro, I pushed you to the brink to see what you would do, and you fucking fought through it." I said, "Most people would want to quit, but they would also quit." I said, "You wanted to quit, and then you dug a little deeper, and you said, 'Not today.'" Bro, that's huge.
Awesome. That's
Those are huge development points of life, points in time for young people to go through. And dude, I love doing that. And don't get me wrong, he's a white belt, but he was a gray belt when he was a kid. He trained with me for a long time, so he has a decent amount of time on the mats. And I don't do this to white belts typically. I start fucking with people with pressure once they're like mid-level blue belt, you know, because I want them to reach the point where it's like, I need an out. I don't have an out. So now I just have to accept the suffering. And that's where the growth happens, man.
Well, that's a perfect example of what we were just talking about, because it'd be crazy to do things now like get bit with ants or do the rite of passage stuff that we used to do. But that's perfect example. Jiu-jitsu. You put your kids in jiu-jitsu. That's essentially a rite of passage thing that they're going through, you know. And that my son's 6, so I put him in jiu-jitsu at 4.
Okay.
And it's not really jiu-jitsu, you know. They play games, they
100%,
steal
bro.
the bacon, and you know they. But there was a couple times where it hurt me to do it. But we would kind of let him roll, and he would roll with some kids who kind of knew a little bit. My friend Tommy's been a black belt for a long time, just absolute stud. And he's got a son who is he's just a killer, just mentally he's got it. And he's a year older than Grayson, my son. And we would let them roll around a little bit. And my daughter is not this way at all. My son's a little bit more on the sensitive side, super sweet kid. And I could kind of see it in his face, and he'd kind of, like I kind of hear that in his voice, and it just hurt me. But I was like, just kind of staying there talking him through it, because I want to let him know, like, it's okay. Like, you're not doing this because you're getting beat up. We want you to feel a little bit of pressure. We want you to feel a little bit of pain as you go through this, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be just fine at the end. I'm here with you through it. You're not going to get hurt. And then, you know, there are kids on top, and they're in gis, and, you know, the gis covering his face, and, you know, he's dealing with the same stuff we deal with.
Can you imagine learning those lessons at 6?
I'm jealous of him.
So fucking jealous, dude. They don't even know.
And I don't push them super hard. And we haven't even gone for a while, just because I want it to be something they want to go back to.
I'm like that with my kids too.
Yeah. And he's 6.
Yeah.
When he's 10, maybe we'll start to turn it up a little bit. But for now, he goes whenever he wants to go. If he asks about it, I'll take him back. But I was super encouraged one time, because I felt like it like I said, it kind of hurts me to do that.
Bro, but that's a good point to bring up, because don't misconstrue us wanting to put our kids through adversity as sadistic. It hurts my heart too.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the perfect amount of adversity.
Dude, it's funny, because the same thing with Levi a week ago. One of my savage blue belts, I think he's 22. So he's a young kid too, right? And I said, hey, I want you to give Levi a hard round. Don't hurt him, because he's just getting back into it, but tune him up, you know? And like, I gave him the instruction to do that. And then I'm watching him tune him up, and there was a part of me that's like,
oh, do I want to do this?
Fuck, man. Like, what am I doing? Like, you know? But if you didn't feel that, that'd be a problem too.
Well, yeah, then you're
a psychopath. Yeah, exactly, dude.
But I was so encouraged when we were doing this, and this is a while ago. We haven't been in like a year. But he stood up after the round, and he takes a breath, and he goes, whew. Like, I was like, oh, okay. Like, you're good. Like, because I was worried about it up until that point. And he stood up, and it was kind of like that recognition from him, like, hey, it's okay. Like, that was supposed to suck. You know? And I can already kind of see those gears start to turn a little bit. And and we explained, so I got him reading Jocko's books.
The Way of the Warrior Kid? Yeah.
We've read all of them like 10 times. And I got the first 2 are on Audible. So every time we're in the car, my parents are in Bend, so we got a 3-hour trip every time we go back to the farm to see my parents. So I'd play those, and he got to the point where he was asking, he's like, Dad, I want to hear Mark's Mission. It's like, okay.
That's
so
cool, man.
And those books are so good.
Do you know he has a Warrior Kid podcast too?
I did. I have it on my,
I don't know if he's still doing it or not.
Well, I don't know what platform it is. I think it was on Audible or something, but I had it, and we just haven't, I forget. I have too much stuff going on, but yeah, that would be, I need to start playing that for him. He's reading now too.
Yeah.
So he's in 1st grade, and he can read pretty, at a 1st grade level. And I give him those books. I'm like, all right, I'll give you 10 cents for every page that you read.
No, so I need to do something like that, man. Incentivize them to use their brain more, you know?
Yeah.
Cause like, and dude, I'm as guilty as anyone with the tablets and the iPads and shit. And before you know it, your kid, you're doing whatever around the house, and then you realize, oh, they've been watching YouTube for an hour and a half, It's like, fuck.
Well,
man.
I noticed it when I realized my son's personality is starting to be affected by the YouTube channels that he watches.
Oh, really?
And it's kind of funny on one hand. He started going, bro, He says when he was 5, he started calling me bruh. And he watches.
He should do my podcast.
Channels.
I say bro all the time.
He'd probably do pretty good. Yeah. Well, he's like, Dad, I want to be a YouTuber. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll do whatever you want to do. If you still want to do that later, we'll do it. But
God, dude, the YouTube shit drives me nuts.
You know what? It's the same as watching TV when we were kids, though.
Of course.
I don't love some of the stuff, and I try to watch it and try to steer them away from some channels.
Well, there's some channels that, like, my kids now don't have that on around me. You know, they got like super annoying personalities, and they're loud and they're obnoxious. And I'm like, yeah, guys, this isn't fucking teaching you anything. And then they fell in love with a channel with a guy called named Coyote Peterson. Are you familiar with that dude?
No, but I'm going to look it up as soon as we're done with this.
So Coyote Peterson, his whole thing is he goes all around the world seeking out animals with the gnarliest stings and bites. And then at the end of the show, he lets the animal sting or bite him.
He would love that.
But it's also very, it's informative about the animals, the environment, all the stuff. And then at the end, all right, it's time to let he did the bullet ant. You know, or he's done all these different wasps and centipedes and fucking snapping turtles and shit. And it's like,
I do everything else before I would do a snapping turtle.
Bro, the guy has fucking balls.
I'm going to look that up.
Because I watch that shit and I'm like, I think I'm a pretty tough man. I'm not letting an alligator snapping turtle latch onto my fucking arm, dude.
No, that's some jackass shit. I think, YouTube is just like social media. It's a tool. It's neutral. You know, and you can use it responsibly
yes,
too. And we've done that with YouTube too, where he'll ask me questions that I can't answer. I'm like, you know what, dude? Let's find a YouTube page that talks about this and we'll go learn something from YouTube today. And we've done that before. And he gets locked into stuff like that. And when I started doing, I'm trying to get him interested in the outdoors as much as I can. Mm-hmm. My ex and her husband we're very, very different. Not in anything negative. They're just different. But he's just, over there, it's a lot of, a little bit less stuff like fishing, hunting, being outside, stuff like that. So for me, it's like a really big priority to take him. We went camping like 5 or 6 times this summer. Took him.
Are they local to you, or does he bounce back and forth?
They're 10 minutes away.
Okay.
We have the best situation
That's
you
cool.
could ask for in a co-parenting situation. But for me, it's a big priority to get him outside, get him fishing, get him hunting, and same like with YouTube, because he wants to sit in front of the TV a lot of the time. Sometimes I'll pull up like Steve Rinnella's show.
Yeah.
And we'll watch him go do a bear hunt or something. And he started asking about fishing one time because there was like this Alaska moose hunt that they were doing, and they went fishing the first day and they caught a salmon, and they're showing him cooking the salmon over the fire. And he's like, huh, Dad, is that fish meat? Like, yeah. And he starts asking all these questions, and I get to answer him. So, I went salmon fishing a couple weeks ago, brought back a salmon. He was stoked on it. So we got to cook it together. He ate it. He loved it. I got a bunch of crabs that I brought back, and we're shucking the crab and collecting all the crab meat, which is a pain in the ass. I hate crab, I like crab, but getting it out, it's not worth it. But anyway, for them,
were they Dungeness?
Yeah.
Do you just break them in half?
Yeah, there's a way you like break them in half.
That's okay. Yeah.
But they're shits like all over the meat on the inside, that crab.
Well, so yeah, like I got a fucking boat out there. I'll show you after the show. And like we go crabbing all the time. And for those of you out there that are still boiling your Dungeness crab whole, you're fucking up.
Oh, really?
Well, you can break them in half like that and get rid of all the guts. And then when you throw it in the water, you don't have all that fucking nastiness floating around.
See, I'm still doing it the wrong way. There's a place where we do it down in Tillamook, of the Oregon coast, Tillamook cheese.
Yeah.
Tillamook Bay is right there, and all these fishing and guides. And you throw your crab pots in, you go out in the ocean. I get super sick, but you go out and you catch your salmon, come back.
You get motion sickness?
Oh, yeah. Violently. I was sick for 8 hours last time we went. But
that's hilarious,
it was
dude.
worth it.
I grew up on a boat, so I'm pretty sure I'm immune to motion sickness.
Somebody told me you get it one time, and I don't think that's true.
No, that's definitely not true.
Well, I always look at my phone too. I don't think about it. I'll be on my phone when I'm looking at something. If I'm in the passenger seat of a car or on a boat and I look at my phone, I get so sick. So it's like violently puking sick.
So then you are an avid hunter and fisherman?
I am prioritizing it now at this point in my life. I played football. I played college football, which consumes your life.
Yeah.
So even high school football, and it's right in the middle of September. And then I went from Corvallis to Portland, focused on fighting solely for 10 years. And I kind of got away from my roots a little bit. Like I'm from Central Oregon. It's a farming, ranching, blue collar outdoors town, except for Ben's starting to turn kind of into Portland. But in the last couple of years, like I bought a bow 3.5 years ago or so and started shooting it. I hadn't shot since I was a kid.
Okay.
And just started prioritizing that. So I've been like, I hunted this year, I hunted last year.
You have any success?
No, neither year. Actually, Bend is getting kind of rough. I have I usually get a Paulina bow tags as a unit right by Bend in Central Oregon. They cleared 3,000 homeless encampments out of the part of the Paulina unit that we hunt.
Fuck, man.
2 weeks before, and we didn't see a single. This was a year ago. Didn't see a single animal. And then they changed the they changed the process in Oregon. Now it used to be a general season archery tag, and you could go to whatever unit you wanted for archery. Now it's limited to the unit. So I was stupid last year. I got a deer tag in Central Oregon, and I got an elk tag in Eastern Oregon. So we're actually, when I got your message the first time we talked, I was like 2 minutes away from losing cell reception going into elk camp. And we hunted Burns, Eastern Oregon, and it's over bugled. There's the way that it's set up now, everybody's in their units or confined to their units. So, if there's not much there, there's still a lot of people there. So it's not all spread out like it used to be. So it's a lot more hunters than there is elk, and it's really hard now. Those controlled hunts. So didn't see an elk, but I saw the biggest buck in my life, and couldn't shoot it because I had the wrong. Because the year before I could have, but this year they changed it to where you're confined to the unit, because I had the wrong unit.
Bro, I swear to God, and I'm a new hunter. I've shot exactly one deer. So I don't even know if I can consider myself a hunter.
Well, you've hunted.
I've hunted. I've got one. Yeah. We were successful last year. We're actually, you can see my bows up here, and I was getting all my shit ready because we're going to Wisconsin on the 25th of October for about a 7-day hunt for whitetail out there. Same place we went last year that we had success at. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I've taken the boys hunting. We went to one of my buddy's ranches in Coeur d'Alene, and he goes, just get a deer tag. You'll 100% fill your deer tag. Like, there's deer all over the ranch. So I said,
private land's the way to go.
Yeah. And I said, well, what about an elk tag? He goes, fuck, man. Like, that's so hit and miss that I wouldn't recommend investing in one, but you'll certainly get a deer. So I take the boys out there. We get our deer tags. And bro, we could have shot like 3 bull elk, like huge.
Of course, yeah.
Never saw a deer.
Murphy's Law.
Never saw a deer, right? And then Zach, he's like, I could see he was like itching. He's like, let me shoot that bull.
Dude, I was...
Yeah,
I went with my cousin and my uncle.
and dude, so he goes, I said, dude, that's called fucking poaching, like that's, and I was like, we don't have an elk tag. We're not taking an elk right now. And then we get back to my buddy's house on the ranch and told him the story. He's like, what the fuck? You didn't take it? He goes, I could have drove to town and got the elk tag in 10 minutes, dude. Like, we could have strung it up in my barn. No one would know the difference. So then the boys are all like, oh,
So the one that I saw, so I was with my uncle and my cousin. My cousin is a little bit less, we'll say, reverent of fish and game laws. And so we're spot and stalking. We're in the truck and we're going to a spot, and 2 deer go across our path. One of them is this huge buck, and he goes up like 20 yards and he turns broadside and just looks at us. And I had a deer tag, but it was wrong unit. It's something like $100 fine. And my cousin's like, just take the fine if you get caught. Just shoot him. I'm like I'm not going to feel good about it. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. And then we saw it again, and it did the exact same thing. It stopped. It was like it knew I couldn't shoot him.
Dude, I swear to God, they fucking know. Dude, check this out. I'm actually, I'm going to pull this video up while we're on the air, because it's like, it's just more, it's like this always fucking happens. And so Zach, who's Angie's oldest, who I go hunting with, he just got a spike tag like last weekend, and he went out, and this is in public land in Washington. People don't fill elk tags very often. It's a very low percentage hunt, right? So he's out with just a spike tag, and look at that fucking bull that walks out in front of him, right? And it's archery, right? And you see it stop right there. And it just stops,
slightly quartered away.
Yep.
Perfect shot.
And then it takes off. And it's like, dude, had he had a bull tag, that never would have happened.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it's like either the animals know, or like you've been saying, you call it God, call it the universe. but there's something about the tag that's in your pocket.
Is never what you're going to see.
It's not what you're going to see. And last time we were in Idaho, dude, I'm not exaggerating. We could have taken a bull moose. We could have taken, we probably came across.
Sounds like I need to hunt with you in Idaho.
Fuck, dude. My buddy's ranch, he's since passed, dude, but he was a fucking savage human being, black belt in jiu-jitsu, Navy SEAL. And his ranch was just animals everywhere, dude. Fucking bull moose. We saw bull elk. We saw herds of elk, cows. We saw wolf. We saw turkey. We saw bobcat. I think we saw every animal in North America except deer.
Okay, it sounds like I'm done hunting in Oregon.
And so here's the funny thing, dude. We put our rifles away. We put them in the back of my 4Runner. We're literally driving down his driveway leaving, and a deer walks right out in the road and stops in front of us. And Zach goes, shoot it with your Glock. I was like, I'm not shooting that thing with a 9mm because we'll never see it again, and it'll just go fucking get septic and fucking die of infection somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
But that was like the caveat, or that was like the fucking grand finale of the trip's like, yeah, we are here and we're right in front of you. Fuck you.
Last year, so I told you they cleared out all those homeless encampments in that Paulina unit. The day after archery season closed, my uncle called me, and his house, they're on 20 acres within the unit. And he goes, well, you're not going to believe this. There's a 5-point buck walking through my yard. Day after archery season, can't take him. And he called me the day after. He goes, well, now there's 2 of them. He sent me pictures of them. He's like, yeah, he's like, they're mountable bucks.
Yeah.
Just can't take them now. Well, of course, isn't that the way it goes?
Dude, it was funny. Our last season's archery hunt, this is a fucking crazy story. And if people are like, you've told that on the podcast a couple times, well, too bad you're going to hear it again. It was on my buddy's private ranch in Wisconsin, and it's an 80-acre plot of land. So it's a big plot of land. And it's all tree stand hunting out there. And people have their opinion on tree stand hunting.
I'm not a fan personally. Never done it because I don't need to know if I'm not. I don't need to do it to know I'm not a fan. I'm just not going to sit and wait in it's 2 square foot spot.
Bro, he has like 11 stands strategically set up on his property, and some of them are literally like a seat the size of a fucking like, I don't know, like a shoebox, and you can't get comfortable. You have to be roped in to like hold you in position. I'm like, fuck that, dude. But then he has a couple of them that are like, they go around the tree and there's like a bench and you can set all your gear down. And dude, I'll tell you this, man, it may not be like, and I don't know, I've never taken an animal through spot and stock. Obviously that sounds more like primitive and you're more involved in the hunt, but there is something nice about going out in the woods, climbing up into a tree and just observing nature for 6 or 8 hours. Because the woods come alive, dude. And it's kind of bizarre. We're always observing the woods at eye level and walking around. And I realize everything knows you're there. And that's why you never see anything. Bro, you climb in a tree and a half hour later, coyotes are running underneath you, raccoons, fucking turkeys. It's like, oh shit, dude. Mm-hmm. The woods are alive out here. So we were on a 5-day hunt. It was the last day and there was like a half hour of daylight left. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, we flew across the country. Like, I really thought that Zach would get his first deer, you know? And I text Jenny and Zach's mom. We have a group thread. And both the girls are like, we're not giving up hope. There's a half hour left. We're going to manifest a buck for you guys. And bro, like, I'm not kidding you. 30 seconds after that text came through, I'm sitting up there. And this fucking, and my wife's text said, I'm manifesting an 8-point for you. 30 seconds later, this 8-point walks out.
No way.
And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? It ended up being a 9-point because it had a tine that was over an inch. And I take a shot at it and I hit it, but it takes off, right? And now I'm like, fuck, dude. It's starting to get dark. We're tracking a blood trail. We lose the blood trail. And it's like, it's super exciting, also super frustrating because it's like, this is my first time doing this. I know I hit this animal and now I'm not going to find it. And that's like, that would be the worst way to end the hunt. And then Zach sends a text message and he goes, a big buck just walked up on my stand, but he's acting real funny.
No, he went right up to him.
Dude. And my buddy Chad that owns the ranch, he goes, that's your buck. You know, he goes, the way that he ran, he goes, you said he took off that way. He goes, the other side of the ranch, if he stayed on that trajectory, he goes, if you look at how the train's laid out, a wounded animal always takes the path of least resistance because it keeps their heart rate down. They're not going to sprint up a mountain and fucking make themselves bleed out. Mm-hmm. He gets under Zach's stand and he puts a second arrow through him. And now the blood trail's fucking, like, he nailed him. And dude, we tracked the animal for about like 45 minutes and found him out in the cornfield with 2 arrows through him. Like, what's the chances of that, dude?
Pretty slim.
You know, like,
how was packing it out in the dark?
Well,
I guess you're on private land.
I wish I could say it was arduous and I did what Cam Haynes does and threw it over my shoulder, but they just drove the gator out there.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you came home with the same thing. So.
Yeah. So pretty cool. And then we had it mounted, and it's actually going to be cool because we're going back out to deer camp next month. And the rule at deer camp is if you take a deer from their land, the mount has to stay in the cabin for 1 season, and then you can take it home.
Never heard that one before.
Well, no, that's their rule.
Yeah.
That's their rule.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that was like a fish and wildlife.
No.
That's interesting.
No, he's like, you take a deer from my ranch and you mount it, I want to display it for 1 year and then take it home. So his mount's out waiting for him now. So awesome. We'll see it next week. And their ranch is right next to, not right next to, it's like an hour away, but from Vortex Optics headquarters. Uh-huh. And they're one of my sponsors and I have a good relationship with those guys. And they're like, dude, we ship shit all over the world every single day. Bring your mount and we'll fucking package it up and get it to Zach's house. So that's pretty cool, man.
Awesome. That is pretty cool.
But dude, I mean, you even said it early in the show, like, I don't exactly remember how you phrased it, but the reward is in the journey, right? Like
seeking is the reward. And that's not like, I don't think that I'm the one who came up with everything.
Say it 3 times and then you can make it your own, bro. Copyright that shit. But that's the thing with hunting. The reason why I think hunting is so rewarding is because it's fucking hard. And more often than not, you fail, you know?
Yeah, that's hunting.
And then you go home and you had no success. And there's always an element of frustration. But if it were easy, when you did have success, it wouldn't be as impactful, you know?
No, not really.
And so I think that's one thing that makes this journey pretty exciting. And it's, you know, like Cam Haynes says, you have to shoot your bow every single day. And I've been slacking on that. So I'm going to try and make up for not shooting my bow every day for the next month and then hopefully go out there and make it happen again.
Yeah, I definitely don't shoot mine every day. I shot a lot in the last couple of years. And I mean, that's kind of one of those things too. It's almost therapeutic for me to just go to the range. I like to be outside when I can, but there's a little indoor range, like 10 minutes away from us. And I'll go in there and I've actually gone in there a couple times, like when I'm just mad about something or having a frustrating day, and it kind of calms me down a little bit because you have to if you're shooting.
Well, bro, and for me, like being a firearms guy my whole life, I didn't realize the difference. It's like
I was going to ask.
It's so much more peaceful to shoot a bow. You know, there's something. It's just quiet and it's convenient. My archery range is on the other side of the gym. We just go out there whenever I want.
Should have brought my bow today.
I know, right? And it's just fucking. There's something about it that's nice.
I was going to ask you. So my buddy Joe, who's been sniper school, been a firearms instructor for a long time. I took him to the archery range for the first time, and I just kind of assumed it would carry over. And his feedback was it really didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I was told the opposite. And I don't know if it carries over, if it doesn't carry over. But when I bought my bow and I got sized for it and they do all this stuff at the bow shop, I was holding groups like this right out of the gate. And the lady that was working at the bow shop, she's like, you told me you never shot a bow before? I said, yeah, no, but I've shot a lot of precision rifle. Like I'm very good on a rifle. And she goes, oh, okay, that's why. Yeah, so, I mean, maybe it carries over for some people. I don't fucking know, but.
Oh, I guess everybody's different. What release do you use? You go with like a mechanical trigger or like a thumb?
Yeah, no, it's a mechanical trigger.
Yeah, so. I shot one of those for a while, and for whatever, I told you before we started, I broke my hand when I was young, so I actually have kind of a crooked hand. And something about that when I use those releases, everything is always just slightly left with no matter how tuned in my bow is, whatever I do on that release, it always just kind of clicks. And I switched over to that thumb, but the John Dudley one, the Knock to It.
Okay.
Which is awesome. And then it's like groups. Well, I wouldn't say they're like that. Maybe more like that. But
so it's difference. You push a button with your thumb, huh? Because I'm not even familiar with this.
Yeah, so it's there's like 4 finger, 3 fingers. The one I use, the one I like is 2 fingers. But you clip it in, and you know, just like with a gun, you put your hand, you put your thumb behind the trigger and pull it back. You kind of rotate your hand over like this.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do, it's kind of the same. I was never be able to do it with a trigger, but they teach you like place your finger over the trigger and then a little bit of back tension, like pull your elbow back, just pull it, and then just pull your thumb without actually squeezing the trigger. I could never do that with those triggers, but with the thumb button, I can, where you just drop back and then you kind of set that part of your thumb over the button. And then you just pull back just a little bit, and that slight increased pressure. It's just, you know, and I like it like I could breathe on it and it's going to release.
Yeah.
It's super sensitive. But it made those, yeah, that made all the difference in the world for me. I'm okay with both, but the thumb,
I feel like I need to upgrade now.
Yep, you can try mine. Sometime I'll come up here and we'll go out to the range and fling a couple arrows so you can mess around with it.
You know, what's funny, man, is like you hear about buck fever, you know, and I know it's a real thing because I've had that happen to me with humans in combat, where it's like it's a long range shot, but it's like a money shot, and you got like, I remember this one incident. It was like poster child for Al Qaeda Iraq. They had like balaclavas on and AK-47s and shit. And I got behind, I had an AR-10, and I got behind it, and it was like, my reticles are just dancing, dude. And I was like, I can't fucking calm down right now. And it was embarrassing to me because I was like, dude, you're supposed to be an Army Ranger, and you can't control your emotions enough to get a good shot. And then fast forward, that was 04 when I took that shot on that buck last year out of the tree stand.
Same thing. Just
Fuck, man. And dude, again, the animals knowing, or the universe just presenting the hardest target for you. Bro, that fucking deer came out, and there was, between where he was standing and the tree stand, there was one branch that came down that was right in my fucking way, dude. And it was like, you know, like the nice compound bows, I forget like what the release is, but a lot of the tension gets released at full draw.
something like 20%.
Yeah, but you still can't hang out there all fucking day, you know? And I'm just like, fuck, man.
There's an instructor that I go to. Well, it's not like I've done a lot with him, but there's a guy who I've done a couple classes with down at the range that I go to, and he'll do this drill where you shoot from your knees, you shoot standing up and stuff. But he does one where you draw and you have to hold it for like a minute to 2 minutes,
Okay.
before you can release. And by you feel good, pretty good for like 30 seconds, and then you get to that minute, and it's like your arms bounce around, shoulders are starting to get tired, your shoulder collapses a little bit.
So 2 minutes, huh?
Like he said he'll do up to like 3. I mean, the times I've done it with him, he's done like, okay, just hold it for a minute. I'll time you. I'll let you know when you can shoot.
All right, I'm gonna set a timer tomorrow. I want to try that.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, if you want to get real crazy, you can hit the ski erg or something, and then do a hold.
Bro, that's like my guys that I hunt with out in Wisconsin. There's I forget what the program's called. I wish I could remember, but it's some type of like archery fit club they're in, and they go do like combining workouts with archery.
That'd be a cool class to go to.
Yeah,
so have that set up. So they're doing it like a gym membership thing where they're doing these courses.
I don't know how the memberships are structured, but there's this club that, you know what, I'm gonna pull it up and see if I can give these guys a shout out on the air, because it's a pretty cool concept. But yeah, they'll bring like equipment out and do different workouts, and then combined it with targets. So like you have to lift so much or do this many sandbag fucking squats or whatever, and then you combine that with shooting, and then you just compete with your buddies. But
what's that Olympic event where they cross country ski and they shoot rifles?
I know what you're talking about. Beast mode archery. That's what they call it.
I feel like I've heard of that before.
And so let's see here.
I might have seen that on Instagram or something.
Yep.
I spend way too much time on my fucking phone.
And that's what it is. Yeah, it's beast mode archery, and they go out and they all get together and do these like fucking workout tournaments and stuff. And it's pretty cool, man. Cause like I feel like jiu-jitsu or whatever the fuck your thing is, if you get a community of people that are like pursuing something that's hard, again, that's what we talked about early. Like you can call it, I used to tell my team, like we could be doing fucking basket weaving here. You get a group of people together that are doing something challenging, and that's where the fucking magic happens, you know? And I feel like Cam Hanes, I know some people hate on him for like making archery mainstream, but fuck, man, the more men and women in our society that can be providers and take care of themselves and be self-sufficient, how's that a bad thing?
Yeah, that's not a skill that we want to die.
No.
We want to hang on.
You know, I was just listening to Tim Kennedy on a podcast, and he was talking about how and I don't know how they compiled this data, but 1 year after the grid goes down, 90% of Americans are dead. Have you ever heard that?
No, but it seems perfectly reasonable.
And it seems reasonable on one hand, or not reasonable. It seems
that outcome seems like a reasonable conclusion.
Yeah, it seems like that's probably realistic, but it also seems very unreasonable. Like 1 year without power, and that's a fucking wrap for pretty much our entire country.
Well, without power, without diesel, without shipping.
Yeah, with all that
farming.
shit, you know? And it's funny because I know a lot of people think like, oh, well, you know, I'd be eating fucking salmon and deer and shit. It's like, no, we'll be eating earthworms and slugs.
Crickets.
And crickets, you know?
Well, that's the future, don't you know? We're going to start eating.
Oh, I know, exactly. That's right.
That's what all the celebrities are doing.
Fuck, dude.
Whatever they do.
Do you follow Sean Baker? Do you know who he is?
Carnivore diet?
Carnivore diet.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't follow him, but I feel like, was he on Rogan a couple years ago?
Yeah. He's a jiu-jitsu student here.
Oh,
yeah, he lives local. He's one of my white belts, bro.
Oh, that's crazy.
And it's because he's always posting.
Have you done that?
The carnivore?
Have you tried
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like what it does for me as far as like how I feel, just like throughout the day. I like what it does for my body composition. Like aesthetically, I get fucking yoked on carnivore.
Do you lose muscle mass?
I do. And what I really don't like about it is hard jiu-jitsu. I feel like my energy is depleted. So what I did is I modified it and I did carnivore with fruit. And bro, that's the fucking ticket for me.
I can try that. Are you familiar with the vertical diet?
No.
It's Stan Efferding's powerlifter / bodybuilder, but it's basically it's like a high concentration of animal products, or animal proteins, animal fats. So like beef, eggs, chicken, everything. But it's like also with white rice and potato.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure they eliminate grain and stuff. I don't really have an issue with grain. I still eat that. But when I was fighting, that's basically what I did. It's animal proteins and fats, white rice, and high salt.
Okay.
Like really high salt. So that's what I did. When I was fighting, I'd get shredded on that. Like if I had to drop some pounds, I'd do like 2 or 3 weeks of that, just maybe not like a half a cup of white rice a day. And it's not like the most scientific way to do it, but I'm just...
Bro, there's something to this. And the bodybuilding community has understood this for a long time. Like,
dude, bodybuilders get a lot of shit, but there's some cool stuff that comes out of bodybuilding.
So bro, I'll tell you, like, it's funny because like the carnivore diet, I've had a lot of success with it, and it's gotten me to points where I've been proud of how I perform, especially when I introduced fruit. But I always like to experiment too. It's kind of just change things up here or there and see how my body responds. And so literally like 8 weeks ago, I hired a fucking a bodybuilder to prescribe me 8 weeks of every single calorie that I ate.
Oh, you're getting real dialed with
Yeah, and I had to weigh every meal. And I've always thought like, fuck that, right? But I was like, it's 8 weeks of my life. So let's see how this goes. And I don't know, maybe you saw that on Instagram, but that was like at the end of it. And bro, I felt fucking jacked.
You look pretty jacked.
Eating tons of rice.
Did you gain weight at the same time?
No, I lost 16 pounds. And so I lost a lot of weight because I was eating, he had me on every other day would be a high carb day and a low carb day. So it was carb cycling, and I would eat 225 grams of carbs on one day. And then the next day would be higher fat and 19 grams of carbs. So it's like pretty much keto on that day. But I'm never going into a state of ketosis because the next day I'm eating 220 grams of carbohydrates. But the interesting thing is like over the last couple of years, I've started to, like, my mindset was kind of like, oh, carbs are bad, you know? And it's like, it's easy to draw that conclusion because people are seeing so much success with the carnivore diet and cutting out all refined carbs. But this guy's like, dude, rice is not going to hurt you. And so I ate a lot of rice and I got fucking jacked. So there's that too.
I mean, I still do that. And I'm not as dialed anymore. Just now that I'm not a full-time professional athlete anymore. So like I'll eat toast, I'll eat grains, and I eat kind of a lot now because I still do jiu-jitsu, I still lift and stuff. So I'm still burning a lot of calories.
What do you walk around at?
I'm probably 225 right now.
Okay.
So, which
Yeah, you're a big motherfucker, dude. You walked in and I was like, damn it, I wanted to be the same size as you.
I'm a little fatter now than I used to be, but it's all right.
But 225, an athletic 225, that's a fucking scary weight, dude. You know? Like when I'm a really, really good athlete and I feel like I'm strong and lean, I'm usually 195 to 200. If I get much bigger than that, I start to feel fucking like I gas out.
Bro, when I played college football, I was 240 and had less muscle mass than I do right now.
Dang.
And I was like, my face was like puffy, and I'm a lot better athlete now than I was surprisingly playing, Division I football.
Well, there's so much science behind it now too.
Oh yeah,
You know?
and you would think that like at a Division I program they'd be super dialed with their food, but training tables like one day it's like literally steak and lobster, and the next it's like Kraft singles and groceries,
Yeah.
And so and then they're pumping you full of Gatorade and sugars and stuff.
Yep.
So it's not like, and it's just, hey, you need to gain weight, you need to eat. So you're just force feeding yourself for 5 years.
Yep.
5 years. So I was 240 is probably the heaviest I've ever been, and it was not a healthy 240. And probably like if I were to be like in fight shape right now, I'd probably be about 215 to 220, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
But I get down, like I get lean when I.
What were you fighting? What weight class were you fighting at? 205?
205.
Okay.
Yeah. And a heavy 205. Well, a bigger 205. I probably could have made 185 if I wanted to, but it's like, if I were in the UFC, I might do that. But
Yeah.
it was just cutting, 40 plus pounds.
One of the guys, he actually moved to New Mexico to join Greg Jackson's camp a few years ago. But he was one of my jiu-jitsu students, and he was like a collegiate wrestler and just a savage fucking human. And he would take fights at 205 or 185, 205, and heavyweight.
No thanks.
He goes, I just want to take any fight I can get because I want as much experience. And he was a wild man. Just, I'll take any fight. Give me the contract. I'll sign it. And he told me, he goes, dude, 185 is harder than 205 or heavyweight. He goes, those dudes feel just as strong, except they're fast and they never slow down.
Yeah, that's higher gas tanks.
Yeah,
so less tissue to fuel.
And he goes, it sounds kind of crazy, but like I think 205 is an easier division to fight in. So,
well, that's part of why I stayed at 205 because I didn't want to do the weight cut. But like I was never a cardio machine. Even when I was in the best shape of my life, I was pretty good for a round and a half, and then after that, it was downhill pretty fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, heavyweight's the worst. That's got to be that's the toughest division to fight at, just in terms of that, because you're fueling so much tissue.
Yeah, dude.
Like if you weigh 265 pounds, your lung capacity is pretty much the same as the guy at 165,
which is nuts.
Yeah, which is amazing, and I'm so impressed by like the Cain Velasquez.
Bro, I was just gonna say, Cain Velasquez was the anomaly of the heavyweight division. We'll never see
anybody that goes 5 rounds at heavyweight. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
But Cain doesn't just go 5 rounds; he goes 5 rounds.
Full tilt
the
whole time.
So Cain was part of AKA, right? That was his home gym, and AKA, their jiu-jitsu program is under Checkmat. And so Leandro Vieira, who's a friend of mine, I don't know if he's still the head coach down there or not, but he was running the jiu-jitsu program for AKA. So because of that, our high-level athletes would cycle through there and train with those guys. And Buchecha was training with Cain Velasquez, and he's like, Cain Velasquez could be a jiu-jitsu world champion if he wanted to be.
Oh, he could probably be an NFL tackle if he wanted to.
He goes, bro, I can give Cain problems for a round or two, and then it's over. And he goes, dude, there's this workout that Cain does where they put 30 minutes on the clock. Like, try and wrap your fucking head around this.
Well, anything for 30 minutes.
30 minutes on the clock. It's 1 minute max effort on the assault bike, followed by 1 minute of a fighting-related movement. And he said it'd be like a 1-2 sprawl or like some type of fighting related movement. And then back to the assault bike.
Have you ever done a minute max effort on assault
bike? Bro, of course I have.
It's brutal.
And I can't stand. I'm dead, dude.
What was did you ever count your calories for a minute or do like calories?
I don't know. I haven't done max calories. It's funny because like when we would I used to do a lot of that stuff with the girls because Jenny and Ange, they do their CrossFit stuff every night. And they would always be like, how the fuck can you get 25 calories in a short period of time or whatever? I'm like, because my legs are 3 times the size of yours and I can generate a ton of power, but then I go right off the cliff, dude. You get that fucking exercise induced pulmonary edema, or in fucking CrossFit they call it Fran lung, where you can.
I've never heard that term.
Oh, you've never heard Fran lung?
I'm like ish familiar with CrossFit. Like I kind of know what Fran is, like the EMOMs and stuff, but I've never been a CrossFit.
Yeah, Fran is a max effort workout where it's 21, 15, 9 of thrusters and I think pull-ups. It doesn't sound, and dude, you can knock Fran out in like 3 minutes if you're in good shape, but you're fucked for the rest of the day. Like so, 3 minutes and you're fucking dead, dude.
So what's Fran lung? That's where
so
you
that
can't breathe.
They find that exercise induces what's called pulmonary edema. And it's exercise-induced pulmonary edema. And what's happening is your tissue is so depleted of oxygen that your lungs are trying to fill your red blood cells with oxygen at a rate that your body pretty much can't sustain. And some of those fucking red blood cells will like proliferate through the lung tissue. And you can taste it.
That's when you taste that iron.
And you can taste the iron in the back of your throat. And that's what they call Fran lung in CrossFit. And like the assault bike is fucking notorious for that.
Oh, well, now that the way you described it, yeah, I'm very familiar. It took me a while to figure out my conditioning because I used to never do like a lot of long time frame, steady state. I used to just do sprints all the time. And I really didn't build my VO2 max very much. You'd think I knew better because I was a exercise physiology major and, but I was always so stressed out about slowing down. I wanted to be able to fight hard. So I would just do sprint on sprint on sprint. And we used to do like 30-second to 1 minute assault bike sprints and get off and then like kind of breathe for a second, and then jump on the skier and do like another 30 seconds and then jump back on the assault bike, which it was absolutely brutal. And I don't actually think I don't think it carried over as much to fighting as just going on a run and spending an hour with your heart rate above 150.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
man. I
think it certainly helps. I mean, anything's going to help, right? But I think that, so the gym that I go to, down in Tigard, outside of Portland, they have a altitude simulation room so they can set it at like 10,000 feet or so. The best shape of my life I've ever been in was just going in there 3 times a week and spending an hour with my heart rate at like 155 to 160.
Bro, do you know that there was a point in time when they were considering counting those as PEDs?
Really?
Yeah.
So what if you live in Denver?
That's why they said like, well, because like a lot of UFC fighters were doing their camp in Big Bear, and it's like,
they tell you where you can go.
You can't tell people where to go, you know? It's funny. I just went down to Fieldcraft headquarters in Provo, and that's at what, like 48,
it's like
5,000?
Just under 5,000 feet, yeah.
And dude, 2 rounds in, and I'm like, dude, I'm a black belt down here teaching a seminar, and I'm getting gassed with these blue belts, dude. It's a different thing, you know? But, yeah, I mean, do you understand, like, have you ever looked into the science behind the altitude tents? It's pretty fascinating, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually kind of controversial because some people say unless you're living at that altitude, it's not really giving you the adaptation.
I guess what the conclusion has been, and again, like science is always changing, right? But we have to trust the science,
right?
Is that train low, sleep high, because then you get to train at your maximum capacity. But if you sleep in that higher altitude, it still induces your kidneys to produce erythropoietin, or EPO, as most people know it as. And that's what all the guys on Tour de France are shooting. And EPO is a hormone that's secreted from your kidneys. And what it does is it forces a physiological adaptation when there's not enough oxygen in the air. So to combat that, your body makes massive amounts of red blood cells so you can transport oxygen more efficiently. Mm-hmm. And so EPO is banned. If you shoot EPO as an athlete, you fucking, it's the same as
there were fighters getting
busted. It's the same as popping for steroids, right? Because it's a banned substance. But because
part of me wants to do it just to feel it.
Oh, I want to do it.
I want to know what it feels like.
You know, it's fun, like gas tank. I'm 40 years old. I'm not competing anymore. I'll put whatever the fuck I want in my body. You know, like I'm on TRT, and it's funny because people will write me on Instagram and be like, "Bro, you're on fucking steroids." And I'm like, well, I'm on some steroids. You're right. Like I'm not,
you know? Yes, you're correct.
and I have no fucking shame in it. And if my heart blows up at 60, but I get to be a super athlete until then, like, okay, maybe I'll live my fucking life.
It won't from TRT, but what are your levels at now? Are you above 1,000?
Below 1,000?
Are you above 1,000?
No, I was at 1,500 last time I got tested.
Yeah.
And bro, I know, like, and it's funny because I'll up my TRT at times, be like, oh, you know what? For the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna increase it to this much or whatever, and just because it makes me feel fucking jacked and wild. And it is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't, and it's funny that it's funny that you can eat pizza and become morbidly obese and get arterial sclerosis and kill your body that way. And that's cool. Nobody cares. But if I put a little more testosterone because I love working out and fighting, there's some problem with that. You know, people are weird, man.
Yeah, but fuck them. Who cares?
Yeah, I know.
I got a friend that just started. I haven't had mine tested, but apparently, like a really high correlation with low T at a young age is head trauma. And
Yeah.
I was a college fullback. So you take pituitary gland
For sure.
trauma and
Yeah.
stop sending the signal to your testes to produce testosterone.
Well, no, and do the same because I have a TBI rating from being exposed to so much overpressure and explosions in the wars that they say the same thing. The overpressure from explosions is the same as head trauma. It's a form of head trauma, and it kills testosterone production. So
Yeah, well, and so one of my best friends started taking it recently, and he's not the type of guy that's like going to do steroids. He started like at the smallest testosterone dose he could. Like I think he was at like just sub 300. I know he's not even over 1,000. He's just up to like normal levels now. But he played college football and he was a college catcher. So he has the head trauma, but also, you know, playing catcher, you're going to take a shot to the nuts every once in a while.
Yeah.
So he has
Fuck,
like
dude.
his endocrine, you know, he's taking trauma in multiple glands. And he started taking it, and he's not even on a high dose, but he's like, I'm sleeping better, my energy's better. He goes, my mood's better. He said one of the things that he noticed it changes. He just wants to do more stuff now.
Yeah.
Like he said he was in his garage doing a workout, and like in between sets, normally he'd be kind of, you know, just chilling. And he's like looking at the hedges. He's like, oh, I got to trim my hedges. I'm going to start trimming them in between sets. And he's like, it just does that to you. So I was listening to him. I'm like, yeah, I need to go get it. I need to go get tested.
Bro, yeah, dude. And I tell people this all the time because I'm very upfront. I have nothing to fucking hide. If you don't like it, I don't give a shit. It's cool that like when you're on TRT, your body does burn fat a little more efficiently. Like you'll notice if you get on TRT, you start to get a little leaner, right? And your athletic performance increases a little bit. And like, but don't mistake that for hard work too. People think like you can up your testosterone and then sit on the couch and eat pizza.
Well, Ronnie Coleman didn't lift very hard.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he's on crutches now.
Right.
But more importantly than that is the things you just mentioned, because I went through a pretty bad bout of depression, probably a decade of insomnia. I would just sit in bed and watch the ceiling fan spin.
Really?
And my mood is improved. I feel happier, just overall in a better state, and I sleep better now. And I've also incorporated marijuana, and I don't know what the right answer is with marijuana because, like you said earlier, we're all in or all out, right? It's like 1,000% in or fucking I'm not doing it. And I found myself liking, and I would never get high during the day, but at the end of the day, before I'd lay down and go to bed, I'd smoke like half a joint. But now I feel like I started to get dependent on that. So I cut that out of my life, and it's like, I don't know what the answer is. But bro, this is our one life. And if you can find relationships with plant medicine or same thing like with psilocybin, I've done ayahuasca, TRT. Man, if these things make your quality of life improve, who's anyone to fucking say otherwise?
Worth it. It's funny you bring that up because 3 days ago I decided I need to stop smoking weed to sleep.
Really?
'Cause I've never been like a day stoner. Like I don't like feeling slow, but same thing. I don't sleep. I'm like just naturally my brain is wired like a crackhead. I'm just all over the
Dude,
place.
we're the same fucking person, bro.
So at night, I'd be up to like 2, 3 in the morning. Especially when I was fighting because I was in this constant state of stress. I'm probably a better person now that that's not my full-time career.
Yeah.
Or my career at all anymore. But yeah, I would lay in bed. I would think about just stresses. I would go over fight scenarios in my head or whatever. And like after so many, and then I had kids. And I was up till 2 a.m. and up early and threw off and that stayed with me for years. And I started smoking just so I could sleep. And it's awesome. It's great.
Did it start having the reverse effect at some point?
No, never. I mean, no. I'm like an indica smoker. I don't smoke anything that's like going to bring me up. And I have before. I don't really like it. I got to be in like a real specific mood for something like that.
Yeah.
But I also abuse caffeine. So
I'm the same way, bro.
Either. Yeah. I'll go through, I have like this stainless steel French press, and I drink the whole thing. I get to where I'm jittery.
Dude, you found a new fly.
I know.
Fuck, man.
Have you seen those salt guns?
Yes, I need one for the office.
Just put one right here. But anyway, yeah. So, like 3 days ago, like I got to a point where I just felt like I was a little bit slower. I'm not really, my memory's not, and it never really affected me that much. But I just hit a point where I was like, I don't think this is serving me anymore. I think it definitely did serve me, and actually, I have a story about that too that I'll tell you with weed. But like 3 days ago, actually, after we talked and I planned to come up here, I was like, you know, I don't really want to show up and have to like stop and try to remember a word and stuff. Maybe, you know, and then I was like, maybe I'll just stop smoking for 3 days. And then last night I was like, yeah, I'm going to be done with this for a while. It's just not serving me anymore.
Dude, that's crazy. Cause I literally just came to that same conclusion probably 3 weeks ago. And I was like, dude, I have to smoke to sleep now. And it's been good. And I like the fact that marijuana helps me get rest. But then I started like, and again, it was on the internet, so it must be true.
Everything on the
But
internet.
I've read that like marijuana will help you sleep, but it won't help you get REM sleep. It can actually hinder REM sleep. So you may get 8 hours of sleep, but you're not getting the quality of sleep that you need. So I was like, I'm going to try just going cold turkey and seeing if I still have insomnia issues. And I suddenly didn't feel as rested in the morning, you know? And so I went 3 weeks without anything. And then I think it was yesterday or the night before, I fucking popped a hernia out that's been bothering me too. So I had to get surgery on that. And I was like, I'm fucking smoking tonight. And I got the best sleep of my fucking life. So
yeah. So I think it depends what you smoke too, or if you take it orally. I know CBN and CBD are supposed to keep you in REM sleep longer.
okay.
And again, I can't verify that. Someone told me that, and I have no idea the credentials. As somebody in the weed industry, of course, they're salesmen, so
Yeah.
maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But
No, I've heard CBN is super powerful.
Well,
for
I don't
sleep.
care what anybody says. CBN is great for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But THC is supposed to knock you out. CBD and CBN are supposed to keep you asleep, and they're supposed to assist your REM sleep. But do you know, like, I don't dream very much if I smoke a lot. When I stop,
that might be what's happening because I don't really remember dreaming anymore. I just thought I'd forgotten them when I woke up. You know?
Yeah. Well, I noticed like I either don't dream or I only dream like right before I wake up once it's out of, once it's cleared out of my system. And I mean, you dream when you're in your REM cycles. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's true, that it does inhibit your REM sleep. But I mean, if you can't sleep, bad sleep's better than no sleep. So, I mean, it's still something like I keep it in the house. If I ever need it, I have it there. But the part of the reason I stopped is because it wasn't for sleep anymore. I just wanted to smoke.
For sure, bro.
And
bro, my team, it's funny. Like half my team, like you see the big picnic tables out there, practice is wrapped up and 6 or 8 guys will sit at those tables and pass a joint around. And it's like,
have you ever smoked before you rolled?
Oh yeah. Not very often because normally I'm teaching, right? And I would never teach high because that's not giving my students what they're paying for. But on open mat sessions, I'll smoke before I roll. And dude, the weird thing is sometimes I feel like it makes me a fucking ninja. And then other times it's like, oh fuck, dude.
I'm forgetting.
Yeah. What I've noticed is that I feel like if you know how like in fighting or in rolling, you have momentum and initiative. If things are going well for you and you're high, you become unstoppable. But if things start to go bad for you, it's like you fixate on it, and then I'm like, oh fuck, dude, I suck at jiu-jitsu now. That's
I'm kind of like that anyway. It's a hit and miss anyway, so it's not really changing anything.
You know what I did for the first time like 2 weeks ago was I ate mushrooms before I rolled.
I was just gonna ask if you ever microdose.
And dude, I didn't microdose. I didn't macrodose. I wasn't like going to the moon, but I was high.
Uh-huh.
And you know what was weird is we got this guy that on Friday night I opened the gym to all surrounding academies. Free of charge, no drop-in, just come cross-train because I think it's good for the community. Mm-hmm. And I don't give a fuck if you're Gracie Baja, if you're Checkmat, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy or gal, let's get to know each other.
We encourage it at
my
school.
I think
we're not one of those schools where it's like, no, this is your team. Like
for sure, man.
Loyalty. We cross-train with Gracie Baja.
Yep, I love that, bro.
ATT now.
I always preach that. It's like, you need a home. Somewhere needs to be your home. That's important to have your home team. But outside of that, man, the jiu-jitsu world is vast. Go out there and learn and experience it and feel it. And I've even had students that have had 2 memberships. You know, they're like, hey, on Thursdays and whatever, like it's more convenient for me for work. I'm down here. Can I have another membership? And I'm like, bro, you're a grown ass man. You can spend your fucking money wherever you want to.
Yeah. Go wherever's going to make you better and go learn something and bring it back to
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
And if that's something you want to do, then I'm happy to talk to that guy and figure out who you're going to be promoted under or whatever. Like, I'm no stress, man. It's like no drama on my mats. But so we had this visiting brown belt. His name's Jake. He visits very often, and he's just a tough son of a bitch. And he's one of those guys that's like, his grips are like fucking iron. And in order to beat him, you gotta kind of be gritty and mean, right? And so I'm in the middle of the roll with Jake, and I remember thinking like, dude, I gotta go like a hard knee on belly or knee on face or something to like start to pull ahead. I don't want to be mean to Jake. I like Jake. I was like, whoa, that's the mushrooms in you. Like,
they're talking to you.
I have to be mean to Jake. That's the only way I can beat this motherfucker, right? And I felt that conflict of having fun and rolling and having a good time, but not wanting to push it too hard to the point where I could like harm somebody. It was a weird place to be because like, obviously we don't hurt each other here intentionally, but my gym is known for on live rolls, we turn it up and we fucking come at each other, you know? And so I thought that was interesting. Like I suddenly had an aversion to like going hard against someone.
That's interesting. I'm curious because I know you're kind of a spiritual guy just from what I've gathered. And you brought up your wife manifesting a buck earlier.
Yeah.
The mushrooms and the weed and stuff. And I'm curious. I've been waiting for a chance to kind of steer this conversation that way a little bit, just because I'm kind of curious on, like, what do you think about like the manifestation things and like this, just the spiritual, like the metaphysical stuff?
I'm always, whenever this stuff comes up, I always say like, I'm a white belt. It's funny. One of my buddies, one of my brown belts he's very grounded in like the spiritual realm. And he goes, Greg, you're a blue belt in spirituality now. So I've been promoted by Tyler. But one thing that I always say is like, I don't know what's right and what's wrong or what's real or what's not, but I've had experiences over the last couple of years that I feel like are undeniable. And the power of manifestation, the power of prayer, we have some type of divine power to affect the physical realm. And there's something going on inside of us that we have a power that I don't think most people believe. And when people do talk about it, it's like, oh, that's woo woo and that's silly. Like,
I used to be one of those guys.
And it's like, no, we hold a lot more power than I think people realize. And bro, there's been a lot of studies that have shown like the power of intention can actually affect the outcome of things. Talking to plants has been proven to make them more healthy. They've done studies where they took piles of rice and gave different intentions into them. And when you give a pile of rice a lot of love and positivity, bro, it stays like white and vibrant for a long time.
Really?
The piles of rice, they'd be like, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, like being mean to it.
So they're actually talking to the rice for these studies.
They would rot faster. And you know which one would rot the fastest? Indifference.
Really?
Yeah. And so, you know, we've heard like a dog would rather have negative attention than no attention. And same thing with children, right? Like if they feel like they're just being ignored, they might do something to elicit a negative response from a parent just to be seen or just to be heard. And so indifference is actually the most debilitating energy.
You know, it's funny. So the second podcast that I did, my friend Angelique, who is very, very different from me in most ways, like spent her entire life in LA. I grew up in, Central Oregon. I look like an asshole, like kind of like a redneck. She's like this, like this beautiful, urban type of, very like kind of left leaning. I'm a little bit more right leaning in a lot of ways, very different. She's very, very spiritual. And she's kind of, we've talked about a lot of this stuff. She's actually intuitive. So she can access people that have passed over. And she did. And I was very skeptical of that. I actually did a reading with her and she's explained it to me in a way where it makes pretty good sense to me. And there's just stuff that I feel is pretty undeniable about it. But she does coaching and she was telling me that shame is the lowest vibrational frequency. Like you're at your lowest, like shame, indifference, feeling not good enough. Like that's lower than anger, lower than hate, because at least if you hate something, you're kind of charged up. Or
yeah. I always say love and hate are kind of similar in a way because it invokes passion. You know what I'm saying?
How often have you had moments with your wife where you feel like you hate her a little bit?
Well, bro, well, here's the reason I say that is because and you'll meet Angie here shortly. Her and I, man, we have fucking gotten to some of the gnarliest fights that are humanly possible. But it's because if you care about someone deeply and you now have this emotion of frustration or anger around them, it can fucking transform into like a rage, right? But think about it. If you didn't give a fuck about that person,
Yeah, you're not going to hate something you don't care about.
then you don't have the capacity to be that angry at it. So that's why I understand that those two things, they kind of have to be intertwined, you know? But like, they're starting to find like on a metaphysical level, like, or not starting to find, it's understood and it's fucking fact. Like everything holds a vibrational frequency down to like the fucking atoms. There's everything on earth, every fucking cell in our body, this table, the rocks, the grass, they all hold a frequency and a vibration to them. And so why would it be out of the realm of possibility that interjecting other frequencies can have some type of outcome?
Well, you know, when I think that person to person, you kind of experience that sometimes. You ever met somebody where right away something just kind of clicked and you're like, you know, whatever energy
Bro,
this person's bringing to the table, I
100%.
resonate with it.
100%,
you know?
dude. And then on the other side of that, I've walked by men just randomly, like in a store or something. And I'm like, I want to fucking take this dude's head.
Oh yeah. Every once in a while, there's
every once
I
in a
look up
while,
and I go, I don't know what's off, but something's off.
But I want to take your fucking head, dude. The way that like they looked at one of my children or something, and you can just feel we ain't the fucking same, you know? And so, dude, there's something to this for sure, man.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way unless you're blonde with big boobs, and then it all goes out. Then my radar is completely off.
Yeah, I think that goes for most of us, dude.
Yeah, it's not just me.
You know, it's funny because the guy that administered my ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica, he actually came up here a couple weeks ago and did the podcast.
To it, yeah.
Okay,
I've listened to 2 of yours. I listened to that one. I listened to your last Guns and Geese 9.
I was just getting drunk and being fucking silly.
Yeah. I was into it.
But he fucking that fucking guy holds powers that I've never seen before, and it's real, you know? And like for me, some of the stuff that I've watched him do, like playing different sound baths and different frequencies, you can affect people, you can change the mood. And I know this sounds fucking crazy, but I saw him do this healing ceremony for this girl, and as he was doing the ceremony, the temple we're in, like a fucking vortex of wind started just circling the temple.
Really?
And then when he was done, I was like, he goes, does anyone have any questions on what we just went through together and the healing ceremony? And I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, like, are we all just going to sit here and pretend that you didn't just summon a tornado? Like, what the fuck, dude?
Did he acknowledge it?
And he goes, Greg, I'm so happy that you said that. He goes, because during these ceremonies, most people are focused inward, looking at the altar, looking at the person that we're trying to heal. He goes, a lot of times people aren't focused on what's behind us and outward. He goes, but those tornadoes happen every time we do these ceremonies. And he goes, it's because the vibrational energy that we're building in here interacts with the vibrational energy of the jungle outside of the temple, and the contrasting energies cause turbulence in the air. And I was like, how the fuck is this something that's like not like no one's ever heard of that before, you know? But it's because I honestly think like there's certain religions that get a pass. If you're a Muslim or you're a Christian and you believe in these things, that gets a pass. But if you believe in like shamanic teachings and ancient medicines and ancient ways, you're now suddenly a fucking weirdo. And I'm comfortable arriving at a place in life where it's like, I don't know what's real and what's not, but I've seen some shit now, and my mind is open and I'm willing to hear all things.
I'm okay with being a little bit of a weirdo.
Yeah.
I'm way open-minded to stuff like that too. I've never seen anything like that, but like 2 or 3 years ago, if you told me that story, I'd kind of be like, all right. You know, like
yeah. And bro, we weren't on ayahuasca or anything either. Mm-hmm. That was one of the days we weren't using medicine. It was just sound. That fucking, can you see that box on my desk right there? It's called a Shruti box. And he plays that and he hums and chants to it. And he matches the frequencies of the box with the frequencies inside his body. And you can hear them like combined. It's weird, man.
Really?
And I was like, I need one of your fucking magical suitcases. He laughs. He's like, all right. But no,
awesome.
It's funny though, because he was on the podcast and at some point I referenced something about like banging chicks or something. He goes, Greg, my mom's going to listen to this. I was like, bro, you're still on my show. I gotta be me. You know? But no, and it's exciting too. It's exciting to learn about like, there's this whole other realm of, I think for most of my life, and like even when I was in the wars, I was an atheist. I was like, I'm going to get shot someday and then I'm just going to become dirt. And that's the cycle of life. And I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, based on some of the things that I've observed and some of the connections I've had with people, I was like, no, there is a spiritual side of life. And bro, that's exciting.
Without a doubt. Were you raised religiously?
No.
I was.
Okay.
Like very religiously, like not Jehovah's Witness, but like a form of like, I don't want to say extreme, but like a very serious, like conservative form of Christianity, like no Christmas, no holidays. Those are pagan holidays. We don't celebrate those. We do things that honor God, like that type of upbringing. And there's part of me that like I believe in God. What I cannot definitively say is what, who, how God is, whatever.
Yeah.
And you've heard me say God, the universe, whatever it is. I don't know. It's just, whether it's in us, around us, whatever. I don't know.
So this is the conclusion I've come to. And again, like, who the fuck am I? Maybe tomorrow my opinion will change. But I think the divine power of the universe is inside of all of us. I think we all share a piece of it. And I think these people throughout history that get worshipped as a god, like Jesus or Muhammad, they were men that were able to tap into this power that we all hold. We just haven't figured out how to tap into it. And again, you want to put your tinfoil hat on. I don't think they want us to tap into the power that we hold. So that is why, like, hey, this is what's acceptable, spirituality, and anything outside of that, you're fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's all, well, the history of the Catholic Church is insanely corrupt.
Of course, that was
the veil to God. Like they held or to the divine, whatever that is. They held the key to it. Like you can't talk to God unless it's through a priest.
Yeah, or the Pope. The Pope gets to have communication with God, and then he can fucking convey it to you. Shut the fuck up, dude. I'm just saying, like, if we want to all say that we're equal as human beings. And we're not maybe all equal on a lot of realms. We're very different, strengths and weaknesses. But to say that one man has a divine spiritual power that you can never possess, that's a controlling mechanism.
That's a cult.
Yeah, it's a cult and it's a controlling mechanism,
yeah.
You know?
Well, that was Martin Luther. Martin Luther was breaking that pattern, saying, no, we all have access to God. Like we can all pray. We don't need to go through a priest to have our sins forgiven. And,
yeah.
I got a book for you if you haven't read it. Have you ever read The Immortality Key?
Nope.
You're gonna get sucked into it. It's all about the history of like they go over like Eleusis, the Greek temple. Have you heard of that?
No.
So it's about basically the history of religion and how it's correlated, how it's intertwined with all this history of psychedelic plants. So ergot like grew on the wheat, and they used to make this into a tea. And in Greek, like all the Greek philosophers, like the famous Greek philosophers, Plato, Socrates, are all said to have participated in this. So they go down into this temple in Eleusis in the dark, and they trip on what's basically LSD. And it's said to have like permeated into like a lot of the early Christian religion, and that it was stamped out by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And I might be misspeaking a little bit on that. I'll leave. It's a long book. It's super dense with information, but I got sucked into it, and I just listened to it on Audible. It's super, super interesting. It'll kind of throw you.
All right. No, I'll check it out, bro.
The Immortality Key.
No, that's cool, bro. Well, fuck, bro. We're at 2.5 hours.
Well, that went by quick.
That did go by quick. That's about what the show runs. And then we also have, I got class coming up here in a half an hour. For people that want to connect with you, are you cool if I put your contact
absolutely.
info and shit? So I'll put your Instagram link in the show notes below, and let me know when your podcast is up and running, and I'm happy to fucking push that out there and help you get some eyes on that. But you got anything you want to close with? Not to put you on the spot.
No, not really. I mean, we could probably talk for another 3 hours, but at some point, I'd love to get you down to Oregon too. I'd like to have you on my show, and
Dude, I'll
if there's
100%.
if there's an opportunity for one of your seminars or guns and geese or something down there too, we could certainly put it together.
Okay, fuck yeah, man. All right, well, I appreciate it. That was fun. That was like I told you at the beginning. Some of my favorite shows are just getting to know new people, and this is fucking certainly one of those episodes.
rad.
So thank you for coming up, man.
Yeah, thank you.